Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Became Mr. Fool's Blessed? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Volume Lord of Mysteries begins. In the alleyways of Tokyo, darkness choked the sound out of the steps, screams of panic going unnoticed. Wearing a blue one-piece and lush red lipstick, a woman was running, her bare feet slipping on the grimy, rough ground. "Help!" she cried, dryness becoming needles inside her throat. "Please, somebody, help!" She looked over her shoulder and saw the darkness taking shape, her heart lunging to her mouth. Her foot struck a brick. She fell. She dragged her body forward, ignoring the pain banging inside her toes. She again looked back, her nails grinding on the ground. It was a man. With lust in his eyes. The woman lashed out with her left hand. Bubbles exploded from her palm, engulfing the space between her and those eyes. "Ah," the man laughed as those bubbles popped after touching his body. "What a useless quirk you have there, missy." He liked his lips. The woman stood up and limped. This time, the man behind him lifted his right hand, his palm aiming at her legs. A short, black thorn came out, parting his skin, and then it shot toward the woman. With a bloody squelch, it struck her limping leg and passed right through it. A scream of agony and hopelessness echoed, melting into the darkness. This time when the woman fell, she knew she wouldn't be getting up. The man laughed, now standing only a few feet away from her. "Slots like you should be more careful, no?" The woman cried. "Please." The man's laugh died as rage took over. He took a firm step forward. It was then they heard voices. "I can't. All Might's ball. Just ick it up. I'm gonna vomit. Stuff my feathers inside your mouth." Ew. It was like the bickering of two children, a boy and a girl. So, when they saw a full-grown man walking out of the shadows with a crow on his shoulder, they just didn't know what to think of it. "Crow your mother," the bird shrieked. "You motherfew." "Nix," the man wearing a white lab coat exclaimed at the profanity, his eyes widening. He had a head full of black hair with glossy black eyes. The villain standing beyond the woman frowned. "I didn't say anything." The bird scoffed. "You were thinking it. I am a raven. Name's Nix. But I will allow you to call me your highness, you mongrel." Nix had a voice that felt like she was a girl in her late teens. However, it also carried with it a touch of coarseness. The white lab coat-wearing man was holding a handkerchief on his nose. And it didn't need much brains to figure out that he just abhorred standing there, surrounded by filth and smell. The villain, Blackthorn, didn't like it. Why they all thought themselves to be higher than him. First, it was this slot. Now, a freaking talking bird? He hated it. He hated them all. He again lifted his right hand. The bird lifted her wing. Blackthorn stepped back, expecting an attack. Living on the streets had made him astute enough to expect such things. Surprisingly, no attack arrived. The bird used the wing to hide her face and, "Chew," she sneezed, rubbing her beak with her wing. "Excuse me. I am gonna..." Blackthorn cursed, fury rising to his face. Suddenly, the lab coat-wearing man bent his back. Alarmed, Blackthorn again stepped backward. Surprisingly, no attack arrived. The man took the piece of cloth off his mouth and, blah, he vomited. Then he cleaned his face and threw the handkerchief away. "Sorry. I am Luke. Can you please leave this lady alone?" Nix face-bombed. "What are you doing?" she cawed. "Years of training." "Years? And that's your opening line?" Luke didn't know what to say. He took out a new handkerchief and covered his nose again. Thoroughly set off, Blackthorn pointed his arm toward them. Now that they had come here, he couldn't let them leave alive. The thorn whistled through the air as it left Blackthorn's palm. The bird's feathers stood up on their ends. She took to the air with a great push of her wings. Because of the force, the man shifted opposite, the thorn missing both as it traced the path between them, hissing. Another thorn had already appeared in Blackthorn's left hand. It took him a few seconds to create a thorn. So, he had learned to keep a thorn ready right after firing the first. Also, Blackthorn could only fire one thorn from one hand at a time. The weakness was, of course, countered by the sheer speed of the thorns and their sharpness. With a low bang, the thorn left Blackthorn's palm as he aimed at the bird. Nyx effortlessly fluttered away. Thorns after thorns came at her, but she dodged them all, going in and out of the darkness. Then, as Blackthorn let out an annoying grunt, she perched herself on a pipe against the wall. Mockingly, she turned around, showing Blackthorn her tail feathers. "Can't touch this?" she sang, twerking. "Can't touch this?" Meanwhile, Luke helped the woman stand up, barely touching her shoulders. She was staring at him with a dead expression, clearly in shock. "Please close your eyes," Luke said. "Please." The woman didn't know him, but she knew only he could help her now, somehow. So, she closed her eyes, leaving herself to fate. Opposite them, a thoroughly enraged Blackthorn's eyes spewed murder. His head snapped toward Luke and the woman, and he aimed at them, ignoring the bird. "Nyx," Luke said, snapping his fingers. "Don't kill him." Blackthorn didn't hear Luke. Nor did he care. With a bang, the thorn left his palm. If landed, it would pass right through both the woman and the man. The very thought made him smile. Suddenly, the bird fluttered between the incoming thorn and the targets. A shine coursed through Nyx as if someone had shown a mirror at her from very far away. In a matter of seconds, Nyx went through a majestic transformation. Flesh squirmed. Bones popped. The small raven suddenly enlarged, becoming a 12-foot, two-legged, feathery wyvern. In the darkness, Nyx's red eyes shone bloodier than blood. The thorn struck her feathers right under the head and ricocheted off. Blackthorn's face paled. He shifted his body to just turn around and ran. "Too late. Go back to the hole you came from." Nyx's girly voice possessed a draconic might, booming in the ears. With one lunge, she crossed the distance between her and the villain, swatting him with her wing. Like a bullet, Blackthorn struck the wall at the end of the alleyway, coughing blood, his eyes rolling back into his head. Boom. "And by hole, I didn't mean your mother's fgna." From behind, Luke gasped. "Nyx!" The time the woman gained enough courage to look back, opening her eyes, Nyx had already regained her original form. "Don't worry," Luke said, smiling at her. "He's gone." Nyx fluttered her way to Luke, perching herself on his right shoulder. Tears streamed down the woman's cheeks, her entire body trembling. Trying to smile, she put her hand on the man's chest. But Luke stepped away, eyeing the blood and filth on her hands. The woman just gawked at the frown on his face. "Don't mind him," Nyx cawed. "He's a cleanliness freak. Also, if you are thankful, how about flashing us? You know, show us those ties." "Nyx!" Luke gasped, horrified. The woman, biting through the pain, looked at the bird as it eyed her bus. She didn't know why, but the idea of a bird drooling over her just brought out a smile on her face. And then she ended up laughing. Seeing her giggle, Luke smiled behind the handkerchief. "Luke!" The sudden voice jolted both the man and the bird. From the corner, Kigo Takami, former number 2 Pro Hero Wing Hero, Hawks walked out, wearing a black suit. He was followed by a dozen agents, wearing similar uniforms and black glasses. It took just a glance for Kigo, the current chairman of Hero Public Safety Commission, to figure out what happened here. Kigo looked at Luke. "Why did you leave the car?" Luke's gaze fell as he stuttered out the answer. It felt like she needed help. Kigo frowned. "That wasn't my question. Why did you leave the car?" Nyx flapped her wings. "I needed to go, all right. Can't a lady go to bathroom in peace in this city?" Kigo's frown deepened. He stared at Luke. "Your eye." One of Luke's eyes had gone blue. Guessing this, he smiled wryly. The contact lens must have fallen. Kigo shook his head. "Let's go. They are waiting for you." "Hawks," Luke suddenly said, following the man. "She didn't see my quirk. I promise." Kigo stopped. He looked over his shoulder and smiled. "Don't worry. You did well, for a person who's seeing the outside world after a decade. Smiling behind his handkerchief, Luke's shoulders relaxed. Then he and Nix disappeared with Kigo. Behind them, the guard at whom Kigo had glanced took out the mobile. "Good evening, sir," the head guard said, his voice flat. "Subject -1 used his quirk." "Oh, sir. He tricked us, sir?" "Yes, a villain and a civilian." "A woman, sir?" "He claims she didn't see anything." "Sir, this will all right." "Yes, sir." Cutting the call, he looked at other agents. A few of them rushed and brought the villain, dragging him on the ground. "Excuse me." The woman approached the head guard. "It hurts. Can you please?" Bang, bang, bang. In absolute shock, the woman saw the agents firing rounds after rounds at the villain, killing him on the spot. Meanwhile, the head guard put on a glove and picked one of the thorns fired by Blackthorn. The woman looked away from the dead villain. The head guard's hand flashed, the thorn puncturing her heart. Blood seeped out of the woman's mouth with a gasp as she stared at the man in disbelief. "I am sorry," the man said, twisting the thorn inside her. "He is the hope of this world. We can't afford loose ends. I am sure the world will understand." And character images of Luke and Nix's gigantic transformation are available. Please note that over 30 chapters of this FIC are already available on Web Novel and Royal Road, as they are the main publication platforms I use. 15 years ago, a raven landed on the sill of a glassless window, its blood-colored pupil widening as it peeked inside the room. Silently, it lifted one of its wings and beckoned someone up. Every inch of manners displayed by the raven felt very human-like, a human trying to break in. 5 fingers grabbed the sill and pulled. A boy with rough blonde hair and blue eyes peeked inside. "No one's in," the raven hissed out a smothered caw. "Stop being a PP." "Nix," the boy gasped at the profanity. Then, trusting the raven, the boy pulled himself up fully, his figure hiding the full moon in the background. He was wearing a torn green t-shirt over worn, blue shorts. As he turned his face to look back, black and blue spots on his face and neck stood out as if someone had been constantly hitting him for months, never letting the wounds heal. The raven fluttered in, effortlessly finding her way through the darkness. The boy jumped down and slipped with the first step. "Luke," Nix cawed, sounding completely opposite her previous hisses. She landed near him. "Are you okay? Did you hurt yourself?" The boy stood up, holding his knee. "No," he whimpered through the pain. "Let's just get the books. If they catch us again." They approached the bookshelves, trying not to make any sound. Nix fluttered up and dropped them one by one. Luke couldn't see properly, but when he felt the sleek paper of the comics, a bright smile surfaced on his face. He took a whiff and that confirmed it. "Okay, let's go," Nix said, landing on the boy's shoulder. As the two went back to the window, the boy's gaze landed on the books other than the comics, the moonlight letting him read the titles. "Nightly," he read, blinking his eyes rapidly. "Nightly Pleasures of Queen Estonia." Luke stared at Nix, his mouth hanging open. The raven liked her beak. "Now listen," she said, rubbing her beak with her wing. "Tell me, who's the smarter between us?" Luke's mouth twitched. "Ooh." Nix gave him a stare. "You." "Good," Nix nodded. Then she pointed at the adult book that shouldn't have been in the library at all. "And that's the reason behind my genius." Bang. The door of the small library banged open and 4 boys rushed in, the lights coming on. "Run!" Nix cawed, flying out of the window. Luke clutched the books and the comics tightly and made a run toward the window. "Ah!" One of the boys, a fat one, laughed. "Caught you red-handed, you quirkless chump." All of the fat boy's fingers suddenly lengthened and grabbed Luke's leg, dragging him back. With his eyes wide in horror, Luke saw Nix's flying away against the full moon and smiled. "Beat the crap out of him," the fat boy roared, smiling. "Idiot thinks he's all might with those hair." He grabbed Luke's hair and tried to rip them apart. One of the other boys brought a water bottle and dumped all the water on Luke's head. "It's not dye," Luke said through the bloody teeth, grabbing the boy's hand. "I told you I was born." The punch came out of nowhere. Luke balled up on the floor as they rained the fists and the kicks, perhaps knowing that it would be over soon. Leave him alone. The raven screamed, barging inside the room through the window. The bird's here, the fat boy suddenly shouted as if he had been waiting for it. Do it. As Nyx came blasting toward the fat boy, one boy's throat bulged and he spat out a gooey substance. It landed right on Nyx, gluing itself to her feathers. With a thud, the raven crashed on the floor, cursing out loud as she tried to furiously flutter her wings. Stupid bird. The fat boy walked up to it and kicked it like a football, the bird hitting the wall on the other side. Nyx. Luke looked through the swollen right eye, the world blurring in his sight. His hands trembled. The tips of his fingers throbbed. An itch coursed through his entire body, making him scratch all over. Then, twitching like a mad, dying man, Luke began crawling toward the bird, letting screams after screams. The fat boy lunged and grabbed Luke's mouth. What's happening to him? One of the other boys said, trembling himself. Make him stop. Madam, but will kill us. But despite the weight, Luke dragged himself forward, growling like a beast. His nails came apart as he pulled himself forward toward. The raven was lying listlessly inches away from his fingers like a broken doll. Suddenly, one of her eyes opened and she saw Luke, reaching out to her. Taking a dying breath, she pulled her wing apart from the gooey substance and touched him. As the boys panicked in the background, Luke just looked at Nyx for a few moments, holding her wing. Then her wing fell. Something snapped within Luke. It was tangible. There was a snap. Veins slithered on his face as he bit the boy's fingers holding his mouth. Unseen by all, the raven's body shone as if someone had cast a mirror's shine over it from miles away. Lights flickered within the library as terrifying screams painted the walls with blood. By the time Madame but, a middle-aged lady, entered the library, it was already over, making her face go white with dread. Blood was everywhere with bits of flesh scattered around along with pieces of chairs and tables. Through the gore, one could make out half the face of the fat boy and limbs that could have belonged to just about anyone. In the middle of all this, a red-haired Luke was seated, holding the raven in his hands. Then, slowly, he looked up, his blue gaze staring dead at the colorless moon. Mr. Ryujurusai sat up on his bed, sweat drenching his back, the barest hint of a blue spark burning within his black eyes. He ignored his panicking wife and fumbled his way out of the bedroom, trying to catch his breath. Not many knew that the head of the Sanji family, the tycoon who had taken the world by storm, the man whose hands reached where even the strongest heroes and villains found themselves helpless, wasn't a quirkless man himself. His quirk was soothsayer. In dreams, he could get a revelation regarding the future, giving him an extremely powerful leverage. However, these revelations were always centered around him and he had no control over them. Still, using these revelations and with his brilliant business mind, he had climbed his way up in society, becoming one of the most powerful and wealthy men in the world. Then what was this? What kind of revelation was this? Taking a deep breath and accepting the glass of water, Mr. Saya calmed himself down. Call Sand, he told his wife. I have a task for him. Morning. Next day. Seated grandly in his office, wearing a black suit, Mr. Sine adjusted his black hair, his black eyes planted on the documents in front of him. Sand, wearing a brown shirt and pants, was standing next to him. He lives in an orphanage, Sand told Mr. Sanji. No recorded quirk. Some foreigners be yesterday, I guess. What about the other one? Ryujuru asked, making note of the faintest tremble in his voice. It had been years since he received a revelation so clear, yet unnerving. He had already made it. He had already achieved it. Then how did this boy come into the picture? Quirk-related accidents kept happening now and then, anyway. What was so special about this boy? Ryujuru remembered the last scenes of the dream, the touch of the boy's fingers with the raven's wing, the mirror-like reflection. The bird, he repeated. Just a raven, Sand shrugged. They said it's been hanging around with the boy for like forever. Ravens are very communicative. No one mentioned it having a quirk. Communicative? Ryujuru shook his head. That wasn't just communication. It felt human. He liked his lips and looked outside the top floor of Sanji Tower, his gaze spanning the world as if he were a god. He had decided. Bring him in, he ordered. Sanji family will adopt him. With a raised eyebrow, Sand accepted the order and walked away. And, Mr. Ryujuru said, making Sand paused. Bring the bird to... Don't hurt it. Character image of young Luke, image of the scene after the bloodbath, and character image of Ryujuru Sanji are available on Patter 0 and chapter text. 5 years later. In these last few years, the Sanji group had begun shifting its assets secretly, gathering a team of the most prominent quirk-related scientists from around the world. Somewhere in Japan, deep underground on private land within a forest, there were a series of labs branching out, covering hundreds of meters. It housed a team of 100 personnel, including over a score of scientists. Within its neat, white corridors, Luke walked a step behind his father, Nyx perched up on his right shoulder. He had dyed his blonde hair black, and for his eyes, he was wearing contact lenses, turning them black as well. At 14 years old, Luke was a tall boy of 170 centimeters. Nyx looked still the same, though, her head high as if she was sitting on a throne. As they kept walking, their steps echoing against empty walls, white lab coat-wearing people gave them a wide berth. However, they all held a very reverential and admiring expression on their faces for the man in a black suit and pants. For Luke, their eyes burned with passion and expectations. Look up, Mr. Sanji said, still facing forward. Luke looked up, avoiding all gazes. Hey, Charles. Nyx cawed at a scientist coming toward them. Still Ephenalia? Nyx. Luke gasped. Mr. Sanji frowned as he saw the horror on Charles's face. He kept walking, ignoring the bird's obvious way of distracting Luke from the unnerving situation. When they were alone in the corridor again, Ryujuru asked, Do you hate it? Luke looked around him and shrugged. This place was practically his home. How could he hate his home? For the last 5 years, Luke had been going outside for a day or two before returning to this place where the scientists did tests on him and on his quirk. Bioalchemy, they called it. A quirk he didn't even know he had it before coming here. After each test, both he and Nyx would get books and comics to read. So it wasn't that bad, he guessed. Also, if he hated it, his father would send him back to the orphanage, no? I like it, father, Luke replied with a smile. Everyone here is our friend. Nyx bobbed her head to look at Luke before looking away. Mr. Sanji just nodded his head. I didn't mean this place, he corrected, taking a turn. Do you hate the things that happen here? Luke's steps faltered. Mr. Sanji stopped. They had arrived in front of the lab with subject -1 written over its entrance. The man in a black suit turned around. His black eyes held the same expectations Luke had been seeing on the faces of others. You already know why I adopted you, Luke, Mr. Sanji said. Your quirk is unique, marvelous, and dangerous if the true extent of its capabilities remains unknown. Remember, everything that happens here is for the greater good of mankind. You will understand one day. Also, as long as you help us in figuring it out, I will allow you to make friends outside. A redness surfaced on Luke's cheeks. Really? Mr. Sanji smiled. Chief Scientist. Ren, Chief Scientist, Donald, asked, looking at Mr. Sanji's frown, is there something troubling you? Donald had been a villain in the USA before Ryujuru extracted him to Japan, hiding him here. He was one of the best minds in the world when it came to research on quirks and their evolution. He was bald but had a white beard on his face, and his brown eyes seemed red behind the glasses' reflection. My quirk's been acting up again, Red admitted, leaning back on the chair. I am getting more and more revelations. Donald frowned. All related to -1. Mr. Sanji stared at Donald. Don't call my son that. Ha! The chief scientist laughed, getting up from his chair. If someone learned that you have such a soft spot for the subject. All right, Luke. Mr. Sanji didn't know if it was because of the dreams, but he had been feeling more and more attached to Luke. It wasn't like he had no children of his own, either. But the zeal Luke carried in his eyes, After everything that the kid had been through here, anyone else in the boy's place would have already crumbled 100 times over. Luke didn't. Even if he hated being here, the boy never admitted it. For a man who had climbed to the top of the social ladder by himself, Ren admired such a trait in anyone, much less a boy. And a bird? Any progress? Ren asked, seeing Donald's quirky smile. The chief scientist's smile widened. I have something to show you. Look. Donald switched on the wall-sized LED screen. Luke was standing at the center of the screen, surrounded by many scientists. In front of Luke, there was a table with a black-colored cat sitting on it. There were many books on different anatomies on the table as well. Mr. Sanji noticed the extreme frailness on Luke's face, but he brutally ignored it. On the screen, Luke touched the cat for a few seconds and then backed up. One of the scientists stepped forward, held the cat, and then dropped it in a tank full of water to the brim before covering the top. The cat began drowning. Then Luke snapped his fingers. A shine passed over the cat as if someone from very far away had reflected a mirror on it. It was so clear that even those who were watching it on screen picked it up. In the next moment, the flesh around the cat's throat mutated, becoming gills. Simultaneously, Luke coughed out blood and passed out. Donald paused the video. The subject. The chief scientist paused, noticing the look on Ryujiru's face. The kid can grant quirk factors to quirkless living organisms, except humans. Human subjects didn't work even if they were quirkless. Luke must touch the animal or plant first. Then he can remotely activate it whenever he wants within a 10-meter radius. The process drains his stamina. And the more complex the nature of mutation, or let's say quirk, the more stamina Luke loses. But that's not the main problem here. For it to work the best, Luke must know the biology of the organism in and out, along with the nature of mutation and how it will act out. For this experiment alone, we made him study for hundreds of hours. Good thing the boy's a natural. Ren processed the information and closed his eyes. Only to quirkless organisms? He asked himself, remembering his dream. In the revelation, Luke had mutated the bird, who possessed a basic intelligence-based quirk of her own as confirmed by Donald. Was it influenced by the boy's feelings? Maybe. The bird wasn't even alive when it mutated. For now, Ren refrained from sharing his doubt with the chief scientist. He looked at Donald. What do you mean by the complex nature of the mutations? Donald grinned, playing another video. On the screen, Luke was standing against the same cat, but its gills had disappeared. The quirk factor vanishes after some time even if it's not activated, Donald explained. The simpler the quirks Luke bestows, the lighter the load on his stamina, and the longer it lasts before activation. Ren looked as Luke touched the cat again, for many seconds this time. Then, one of the scientists again dropped the cat in a water-filled tank, closing the top. Something was different this time. Luke's hand was up, but it was trembling. It was as if the boy was afraid of snapping his fingers. A hand landed on the boy's shoulder. It was Donald's, Ren recognized. Luke's entire body jolted and he snapped his fingers. In the tank, after the mirror-like reflection, the cat's entire body bulged. Its flesh boiled, tumors growing exponentially. In the next moment, those tumors took the shape of bat-like wings. The cat grew as well, becoming as big as a tiger, long canines made of steel jutting out of its mouth. And it was still mutating. On the other side, veins slithered over Luke's face. The white sclera of his eyes became red with blood. Streams of blood ran down from his ears. Then, with a boom, the abomination within the tank exploded. Luke let out a soundless scream and passed out as well. Donald paused the video. "Don't worry," he told Ren, returning to his chair. "We heal him every time after such experiments. But I need more time. For each experiment, Luke must study for hours. Even if the boy's smart, it's a time-consuming process. Just shift him permanently here. He likes this place anyway." Ren ignored the suggestion and the blatant mockery in Donald's words. "What about the bird?" Donald shrugged. "We just give it a few books to read. It doesn't make a fuss." After the first time when they had tried to separate the boy and the bird, Donald had decided against it himself. The boy had almost died, ending all research on the spot. Donald, Ren said, looking at a passed-out Luke on the screen. I brought you here because of the revelation, too. I don't care about your views on quirk singularity. But, if that's why my quirk, soothsayer, brought you to me then? For the first time, Donald's face held a serious, dark expression. It's true, Mr. Sanji, he said, leaning forward on the table. One day, the quirks will grow so powerful that humanity will go extinct. This quirk, bioalchemy, can very well be the only way to prevent that from happening. Ren knew what Donald meant. A quirk that could bestow quirks to quirkless plants and animals didn't sound like much of a humanity's salvation. But, if it was combined with the ability of creation, let me contact Dr. Kyudai Garaki, Donald said. That man's a genius. I have tried everything to somehow copy the kid's quirk, but I failed despite my expertise. If something happens to him, can we really afford to lose our only hope? Ren stood up, following a script. This was my latest revelation about Donald. The chief scientist's brows shot up. What did you answer? He asked, liking his lips. Mr. Sanji took a last look at Luke's bloody figure and shook his head before walking out of the office. Despite what Ryujiro Sanji wished, fate had other plans for Luke, it seemed. That very night, the tycoon dreamed once more of the coming of the most terrible man. A man who could steal quirks. A man who brought even All Might to his knees. A man who lost, but then returned, stronger than ever all for one. When Ryujiro woke up, he found himself trembling. Yes, the dream was terrible. Yes, the threat was unavoidable. But that was not the main reason behind this tremble. Ryujiro Sanji hated nothing more than going back on his words. He trembled because he knew he must break a promise. He trembled because, this time when he took Luke to the labs, the boy wouldn't be coming back. And, character image bioalchemy at work, i.e., the cat mutating, is available on Patter 0 and chapter text. 10 years later, Luke looked outside the limo's open window, Hawks sitting next to him. So that's how it was. Hawks nodded, behaving as if he didn't know it already. I don't know what would I have done if I were in Mr. Sanji's place. But it's all right, Luke said, still looking out. The lights, the rush, the people, the air, it made him feel alive. He faced Hawks and smiled. It doesn't matter. Hawks' mouth flattened into a thin line. It wasn't the first time he was meeting with Subject -1. A few years after assuming the position of the chairman of Hero Public Safety Commission, the famous tycoon of the Sanji Group, Mr. Ryujiro Sanji had contacted him, letting him know a few secrets. Hawks had been shocked beyond words to learn that the man wasn't quirkless. But as he talked more with Mr. Sanji, things had become clearer, letting Hawks learn a bitter truth: the tycoon practically owned the Japanese government. As if that had not been enough, Mr. Sanji then revealed the existence of Subject -1. Hawks thought, recalling the info on Luke's quirk. If All for One had stolen it, Hawks imagined the All for One at the end of the final war, with an army of monstrous animals and plants with strange powers, and a chill ran down his spine. Now, Hawks felt he had unconsciously lied to Luke. He knew exactly what he would have done if he was in Mr. Sanji's place. He sighed, feeling guilty for no reason. Aren't you angry? Hawks asked, seeing the sheer joy on Luke's face. For what they did to you, holding you there for a decade, experimenting on you. For a moment, Hawks noticed the tremble in Luke's eyes. If he had learned to hide his emotions, Hawks didn't know. But, for that tiny moment, he sensed something more than anger. Why did you agree to it? Hawks asked, changing the topic. To the marriage. Luke brought his thoughts to the present and recalled the moment when his father had come to him. Sanji Group and the Yaoyorozu family had set up a quirk marriage between Luke and the current number 19 hero, everything hero, Creati. If Luke agreed, there would be no need for him to remain in the labs anymore. You go out to have a family, so too much to ask from someone who had never had a single friend in his entire life, no? Luke didn't say that, though, accepting his father's request on a single condition. From a scientific perspective, it does make sense, Luke answered Hawks. If I and Momo have a child, the chances of the child having a quirk with both my and her quirk's traits are over 90%. With the doom planned by quirk singularity, the birth of such a child is humanity's only salvation. A fusion of bioalchemy and creation can theoretically let one manipulate quirk factors at will in all organisms. But that's not why I agreed to the marriage. Hawks looked at the hope of humanity with a troubled gaze. On one side, it was Luke, hidden and secured from the outside world. On the other side, it was Momo Yaoyorozu, protected by secret forces all her life. It had shocked Hawks beyond measure when he had learned that there had always been quirk users watching over Momo, making sure she didn't get mortally wounded. Some had even died in her place. Hawks was sure that if she hadn't been the daughter of the Yaoyorozu family, then Mr. Sanji would have locked her up as well. "Why did you agree then?" he asked. Luke grinned. "I told my father I will only agree if I get to present my research to the world." Hawk's brows shot up. "Quirk conformity?" "Yup." Luke looked outside, taking a deep breath. Hawks shook his head. Even after knowing that the theory of quirk singularity wasn't just a myth, but a cold, hard truth, he just couldn't see any sense in Luke's research. Not only him but no one in the world believed it, Hawks knew. Before Luke came out, Sanji Group had published the research for the entire world to see, attracting public outrage and mockery from thousands of scientists. They had, of course, ignored it. Now, Hawks knew why Sanji Group didn't try to defend the theory. They don't believe it either. Hawks concluded. It was just a condition. "You don't want to marry at all, do you?" he asked Luke. The man wearing a white lab coat shook his head. "I will do it," he said, feeling the wind on his face. "I know what's at stake here, Hawks. My life was always supposed to be a sacrifice. That's my fate." Hawks stared at Luke with admiration. "If we can save the world by this marriage, then I will do it." These were the exact words Momo said Hawks had learned. It felt like she needed help. "You know," Hawks said, recalling Luke's words from half an hour ago. "You would have been a great hero." "Yeah," Luke asked. "How do you know that?" "Because we are the same," Hawks said, smiling. "You are just me if Endeavor had never saved me from my father." In his childhood, Hawks' father would force him to stay locked up in the house to ensure no one could discover and capture him, and he was unable to interact with the outside world or anyone his age. Furthermore, he was subjected to constant physical and emotional abuse by his father. Hawks would be kicked simply for turning his back to his father, who would constantly say how it would have been better if he was never born. It was only after Endeavor arrested his father that Hawks escaped his hopeless fate. A hopeless fate that Luke never escaped, it seemed. "Hey, Hawks." Nyx cawed suddenly, perched regally between Luke and Hawks. "How about opening a bottle of champagne for this big sister?" Hawks' lips twitched. "Crows and hawks aren't. Crow your mother. I will murder your butt." Nyx lunged at Hawks, brandishing her claws. Luke tried to grab her, a few tiny feathers battering against the wind. Cough. Hawks cleared his throat as he heard Nyx's indecent curses. "Sorry, I meant Raven, big sister." Nyx took several deep breaths and started attending to her feathers. Humph. To celebrate the joining of their families with marriage, the Sanji Group and Yaoyorozu family arranged a grand party. Primarily, it was to formally let Luke enter the world, presenting him as Mr. Sanji's son who had been earning his doctoral degree overseas, to tell the world that he didn't have a quirk. With the rise in international crimes, they had decided to never let anyone know that Luke even possessed a quirk. If someone even got a hint of it and acted out against him hoping to steal or copy his quirk, injuring him meanwhile, then it would also be the first time for Luke and Momo to meet each other, both knowing the hidden implications behind the marriage. In a great hall, many famous figures had gathered, the sound of soothing music decorating the background. Izuku Midoriya, Achiko Uraraka, Shoto Todoroki, Katsuki Bakugo, Tenya Ida, Denki Kaminari, and Kyokujiro were standing together dressed formally. "There she is." Uraraka almost screamed cheerily. Momo, wearing a long green gown, walked up to them. "You guys made it." "Tihis." Bakugo sked, loosening his tie. He pointed at Izuku. This idiot practically dragged me here. Shoto smiled. Never thought you would be the first one to get married. Congratulations. Tenya held up a large gift-wrapped box. Congratulations. From all of us. Momo accepted the gift, a wry smile dancing on her lips. After talking with the old 1A gang for a while and sharing a few laughs, Momo slipped away, her gaze shifting left and right. Kyoka Jiro caught up with her, frowning. What's going on, Momo? She asked. What aren't you telling us? Momo and Kyoka were best friends. Yet, it was only yesterday Kyoka learned about this marriage nonsense. It was clear something was off with whatever it was. When Momo didn't reply, Kyoka held her hand and pulled her away before pointing somewhere. Momo followed Kyoka's finger and saw him sitting at a table in a far corner, with a bird on his shoulder. He was wearing a black shirt and pants. But his hair wasn't blonde and his eyes weren't blue as was told to her. He's been sitting there since the moment he arrived, Kyoka said. Also, what's with the freaking bird? Suddenly, they saw a little girl approaching the man. Momo elbowed Kyoka. Hearing Hiro, earphone jack rolled her eyes. The earphone jack on her right earlobe extended, embedding itself into a pillar next to them. She pressed a switch on her belt and gave Momo an earpiece. Can I pet her? The girl asked, pointing at the bird. I am Nyx, the bird cawed, jumping off Luke's shoulder. You, little girl, you are cute. I will allow you to worship me. Nyx. Luke stared at the bird. He nodded at the girl. You can pet her. The girl stood on her toes and put her finger on Nyx's head, a brilliant smile surfacing on her lips. So smooth. Of course. Nyx cawed, stretching her wings. I wash my feathers daily with shampoo and conditioner. Wow, the girl had stars in her eyes. She then looked at Luke. Are you a hero? Luke stiffened. No. Whoa. I thought the bird was your quirk. The girl said. Seeing Nyx's furious expression, Luke laughed. Ha. She's just an old woman trapped in a bird's body. How dare you, you mongrel? Nyx hissed and lunged at Luke's face, slamming his cheeks with her wings. On the side, the girl began hammering Luke's legs too. How dare you, you mongrel? After a few moments, Luke spied two figures approaching them. He recognized one of them instantaneously. As the unknown girl with long earlobes took away the girl, Momo sat down opposite Luke. Nyx, sensing the oddness, stopped slapping Luke's face and turned around. Whoa! Huge! Nyx! Luke gasped. Momo frowned. Nyx hopped to Luke's shoulder and smiled, covering her beak with her wing. You lucky bstrd. She's packing. Nyx! Luke looked at Momo horrified. Momo's frown deepened. My father told me about you, she said, taking a deep breath. With your quirk, you could have easily broken out of that place. Why didn't you? Luke stared at the spotless tablecloth. Running away is easy. Momo smiled, but the smile vanished before Luke or Nyx saw it. You published quirk conformity, didn't you? Luke's head snapped up. Who told you? Momo ignored the question. Your research claims that all quirks have originated from one source, she said. That the quirk singularity is nothing but an effect to this cause. I am no scientist, but I agree with those who are. Isn't it a little too absurd with the little data we have? Nyx's eyes went. Luke's head slowly fell again. Momo continued uncaring. However, that's not what you were really trying to tell, were you? Luke's head jolted up. Momo's eyes held intelligence as she looked at him. You were saying that a quirk like all for one is not only inevitable but also repetitive in nature. Luke stared at Momo stupidly. Hundreds of papers. Thousands of calculations. Tens of thousands of hours. The world's greatest scientists had read Luke's research even before it had been revealed to the outside world. Yet, no one inferred the true meaning he wanted to tell through it. Not even Dr. Donald, the chief scientist. Momo did it right here in front of him, in a few sentences. Nyx whispered in Luke's ear. I like her. For the first time, Luke truly looked at Momo. He didn't know why, but his heart was thumping. You are beautiful. Momo smiled, getting up. As she walked a few steps away, she paused and looked over her shoulder. You aren't bad either. Luke didn't understand. Nyx face-bombed. It means she will reproduce with you. Nyx? Luke gasped. 1 year later. Who are you talking with? Luke asked. In the mansion's hall, Momo was seated on a sofa by the fire, gently caressing her belly. To our daughter. We talk sometimes. Luke smiled and sat down opposite her, her eyes landing on the framed photo of their wedding on the mantelpiece over the fire. Unknowingly, his mind went to the times when his father had adopted him, when they forced him to use his quirk day after day, cleaning the blood off him so that he would always remain clean, very clean. Luke looked at Momo and his vision blurred. She held his hand, looking into his eyes. What's the matter? Luke shook his head, smiling. I don't know, but when I look at you, it feels like, finally, there's some meaning in life, that it wasn't all pointless. Momo got up and sat down on Luke's lap, hugging him. From somewhere, Nyx landed on the mantelpiece. If I had a wife who would press those bazumbas on my face every day, then I will find meaning in life too. Nyx? Luke and Momo both gasped. Run. It found us. Luke's mind rocked. Who was that? Contrary to him, Momo's entire face paled all of a sudden. Use your quirk on Nyx. Now. As she screamed, she was already activating her quirk, simultaneously pressing the switch on the sofa that would alert all guards outside. Luke, though flabbergasted by the voice and his wife's sudden action, didn't wait for explanations. With an urgency, he lifted his hand and boom! Fire was everywhere. Someone was screaming miles away. No matter how the tongues of fire liked his face, he didn't feel the heat. Only inches away from him, washed in blood, was Momo, looking at him with her remaining eye. Between them, Nyx lay dead. But Luke's hand moved, his fingers dragging themselves toward them. But there were dozens of bodyguards outside, all with powerful quirks. Momo reached out to him. Our blood foamed in her mouth. But why was it happening? Why didn't his father see this? He saw everything. Steps rang in Luke's ear. Someone was standing on top of them. He looked up. But Katsuki Bakugo, the head bodyguard assigned to them, was surrounded by a fuming, red mist, his eyes glowing bloody red. He pointed his palms toward them. Something snapped within Luke, a silent scream of buried rage bursting out of his lungs. Sparks oozed out from Bakugo's palms as he smirked. And then everything went dark, a gray fog lingering in the back of Luke's broken mind. An image of Luke and Momo's wedding ceremony is available on Patter Zero and chapter text. Screams of agony rang through the emptiness, an evil spirit crying tears of blood. All his life he had gone along with his fate, making his peace with it. All his life he had fought the demons hiding within his heart. All his life he had held himself back from turning into a monster, a coward, a villain. And the moment he found someone to live for, they betrayed him. They killed his wife. They killed their unborn daughter. Madness from the pits of hell oozed, becoming a cocoon around him. He wanted to kill. He wanted to rip their souls apart. He wanted to end the world. He wanted to see everything and all burn as she had, in front of his eyes. Then it all began melting away. He threw his hands at it, trying to grab the madness. His teeth bit into it. His eyes tried to contain the rage within. However, no matter what he did, no matter how much he wanted it, the emotions didn't stop abandoning him as if beckoned by a higher power. When all but an empty feeling of sadness remained in his heart, Luke found himself holding his face, crying unseen, unfelt tears. It felt like it had been ages since he had begun screaming, drowning in his emotions. Yet he could still see it. Momo's face inches away from him. Nyx lying dead between them. Wake up. The words were like a knell in Luke's mind. The final dregs of the evil lingering within him, clouding his thoughts and turning him insane, vanished. Slowly, Luke took his hands off his face. He was seated on a chair at the end of a long table. On the floor, a sea of gray fog was boiling, and all around him, pillars were rising, melting into a great, domed roof. Opposite him, at the other end of the table, was him. Was it even a person? Luke couldn't tell. He was wearing a black suit and pants with a top hat, and his face was a blur. The same gray fog covered him, but it also felt different, somehow. It was as if the gray fog was alive and it was worshipping him. Luke didn't know why, but despite the deaths of his loved ones, he felt calm. He wanted to get angry, but couldn't. So, his scientist's instincts took over, bringing rationale to his mind. He looked at the person sitting opposite him. "Am I the dead?" Luke asked, looking around, searching for his wife. If this was the afterlife, she should be here, no? He wanted to get up, but couldn't. So, he looked back at the person. The man in the suit tapped his finger on the long table as if thinking over something. Luke let out a wry smile. So, he was dead after all. Gone. Everything was gone. Luke took a deep breath, lifting his head. If he was here, sitting against this being, then there must be a reason for it. Where am I? Why am I here? There was a brief moment of silence. The figure with a blurred face slid his hand against the table's edge. This is the world above the gray fog, a place that exists in higher dimension. You can call it the Gray Castle. Gray Castle exists in a higher dimension? Luke's brows pressed together. He waited for the existence to finish speaking. As to why you are here, I want to know the answer to this question too. Huh. Luke didn't know what to say. You didn't bring me here? What was going on? I allowed you to come, but the existence told Luke. You were sent here. Luke just stared ahead, dumbfounded. Someone sent him here, to a higher dimension. Did my wife? The figure shook his head. Sighed. Luke let out a breath. Can you please explain more? What exactly happened? Luke didn't know who this existence was, what it wanted, and why it had allowed him to come here. What he did know was that this existence was insanely powerful than he was. And it was willing to clear his doubts. I believe in the principle of equivalent exchange. The existence said. Before I answer your question, are you willing to share details about your world? Principle of equivalent exchange? Luke ruminated. Is it a whim or an imposed rule? Still, Luke didn't mind sharing anything. What did it matter, anyway? He was already dead. So, starting from the history of quirks, Luke began telling everything. Quirks, quirk factors, society, wars, education system, science, etc. With Luke's hoard of knowledge, the only thing he couldn't tell was minute interpersonal details, like friendship, enmity, common experiences of life that he had remained a stranger to. In the grand scheme of things, your theory of quirk conformity and quirk singularity does make sense. On all the planets that I know, at least those that have extraordinary powers, you can always find a similar background. The existence told Luke, tapping the table. What I want to know is, how did you come up with the name conformity? Luke was still hung up on the sentence on all the planets that I know. When the figure asked the most simple question to him. Luke felt like someone slapped him across the face. His face contorted as he tried to remember, but failed utterly. It was his theory. It was he who had spent years researching it. Yet, he didn't remember how he decided to call it quirk conformity. What ridiculous notion was that? Let it be. The existence said, as if it had asked the question just to confirm something. Before I answer your question, would you like to know how I see you? Luke was still grappling with the absurdity of lost memories when he heard the question. He looked down at himself. He was wearing the same clothes as he had been wearing before dying. A simple white t-shirt over black pajamas. Still, now he had confirmed that this man could very well be a godlike existence. Every word that this existence said could have a hidden motive and far-reaching implications behind it. Luke nodded. With a jerk, Luke felt like his eyes left his skull. The vision turned around, shifting from the fog-shrouded existence to himself. What Luke saw shocked him beyond measure. Luke saw himself, transparent, but hundreds of blackish threads oozing out of him, disappearing into the vast gray fog beyond. He could still make out his blonde hair and blue eyes, but that wasn't all. There were minute, golden dots scattered inside his body. His hands, instead of dots, held blobs of golden light, their brilliance overshadowing everything in his vision. An even more striking detail was that there was another blob of golden light near his heart like a distant island. This is spirit vision. Simply, it lets one see the spirit body or soul of someone. In your case, as you are dead, it is the projection of your spirit body just before your death that I allowed to come here. Luke's vision returned to him. With his brilliant mind, it didn't take him even a moment to realize what the existence was talking about. Those blobs of golden lights in my hands. Here's a theory. The figure said, tapping his finger on the table. The quirk factors you mentioned are nothing but manifestations of, let's say, spirit particles in the outside world. This would also explain why no one in your world succeeded in extracting the quirk factors alone from a quirk user. Luke looked at the figure with a strange admiration. This would also explain the presence of vestiges when quirks are passed on to someone else, stolen or otherwise. Exactly. But here's things get tricky. The figure slightly shifted on his chair as if he were going to discuss a grave secret. Even though there are quirks based on spirituality, as you said, and even though there are concepts revolving around spiritual enlightenment in your world, there isn't much focus on seeing quirks from a spiritual perspective, despite the rich, scientific history. Luke gaped, feeling absolutely puzzled himself. It was true. Even the greatest scientists never deliberated going beyond quirk factors, trying to locate their origin. Suddenly, like a lightning bolt striking him from the blue sky, Luke remembered the very first conversation he had with Momo. I am no scientist, but I agree with those who are. Isn't it a little too absurd with the little data we have? Little data, little date. Luke was thunderstruck. Why wasn't there any data? It is as if the people of your world are actively avoiding looking deeper into the quirk's mysteries. The existence worded Luke's thoughts. And now I will answer your question. Luke had gone extremely quiet. In only a few sentences, he had realized that there was something deeply disturbing about the things he would learn soon. Someone or something opened a rift on your end, connecting to this place. The existence explained. When this something tried to push you in, I noticed a few things. First, there was a great convergence of fate upon you, which was fueling the rift itself. Second, there was a spirit body latched onto you that wasn't yours. Third, your world didn't have a spirit world. Convergence of fate. Luke repeated, his mind numb. Then he looked at the blob of golden light that was supposed to be in his chest. Spirit world. All worlds have planes that exist to either guide or assimilate the souls, or spirit bodies, upon death. The existence replied. Such planes superimpose themselves over reality, both existing together. Even though the people of your world have spirit bodies, there's no spirit world. Not only that, I tried to look outside the planet, hoping to trace its location from the outside. But something blocked my gaze. There seems to be a boundary around your world that prevents foreign interference. That's why I allowed you in. What did he just say? Luke stupidly looked at the gray figure. A boundary around the planet blocked his gaze? Isn't he like a god? Luke gulped. Are there beings on a similar level to this figure in my world? The thought made him tremble. But Luke was already having a hard time controlling the words that had been trying to explode out of his mouth. Since the moment he had learned that this existence had allowed him in, he had been thinking of it. Can you send me back? Luke asked, balling his fingers into fists. There was a fierceness in his voice. So what if there was a boundary around his world? So what if there was no spirit world? So what if there was more to quirks than they all had thought? So what if there were gods and demons? He wanted revenge. He wanted to kill all those who had murdered him and his wife and their unborn daughter, starting with Katsuki Bakugo. I have a better proposal than mere revenge. The existence said. I cannot send you back to the same time, but I can graft your memories to you of the past, simulating a resurrection. Go back in the past? Luke thought aloud, astounded. If that happens, I can change everything. Of course, you would find that changing the events leading to your death will be pointless, especially if there are external factors involved. In that case, I am willing to extend a helping hand to you, parasitizing you with a hint of my powers. Luke liked his lips, rows of words playing in his mind. I believe in the principle of equivalent exchange. A price is exacted for what fate bestows. The existence said as Luke had predicted. In return, I would like you to pursue the mystery behind the absence of spirit world in your world. Also, you would have to spread my religion in your world, gathering followers. Gathering followers? Luke wasn't sure about that. He had hardly interacted with anyone in his world even when he was a child. How would he ever gather followers of an unknown, shady religion? Why? Luke asked, already making up his mind. At this moment, he would just do anything to go back. He would do about just anything to prevent what happened to Momo. Let's just say that I am interested in the development of a world that functions without a spirit world. For a moment, Luke contemplated the consequences of his decision. He would be practically agreeing to let this figure invade his world, bypassing the boundary that was supposed to prevent exactly that from happening. What else could mean by spreading religion and gathering followers? And yet, Luke nodded. He needed to go. He wanted to go. If he wanted to defy the fate leading to his loved ones' deaths, then he must accept. The existence nodded back, neither calmly nor hurriedly. Would you like me to separate the second spirit body? No. By now, Luke had already figured out who it was. All his life, everyone who knew about his quirk had wondered why he could use bioalchemy on Nyx when she was a quirk user herself. It seemed she wasn't. Unknowingly, unconsciously, Luke had been bestowing an intelligence quirk factor on her to have someone to talk to. Hours after hours. Months after months. Years after years. By the time he was 9 years old, he had done it so many times, every single day, that the quirk factor became permanent, becoming indistinguishable from an original quirk. Her spirit body latched onto the returning quirk factors which were part of your spirit body. The existence said, when you return, and if you choose to bestow her the same quirk, she would also gain all her memories. Do you really want that to happen? Luke took a deep breath and nodded. Very well. Luke stood up and hesitatingly asked, how should I address you? You can call me. The existence lifted his right hand and snapped his fingers. Mr. Fool. And image of Luke's spirit body is available on Patter 0 and chapter text. The Sanji group, led by the formidable Ryujuru Sanji, was thought to be a dynasty that could not only predict success but could also shape it. Revered and feared alike, Mr. Sanji was known for his uncanny ability to be one step ahead in business, politics, and society, as if fate itself was holding his finger, subtly guiding him. That he himself was quirkless mattered little on the stage he played. Unlike him, though, his family members' quirks were well known. Misaki Sanji, Ryujuru's wife, was a beauty to behold, having the quirk future sketch. She could subconsciously sketch events that were about to happen in the next 24 hours. However, the sketch differed too much from anything remotely discernible and was always related to her. Sometimes, it took days to interpret a sketch, only to find out later that it was of her drinking tea. Their son, Rakuya Sanji, had the quirk dream walk. Their daughter, Aina Sanji, had one of the most desired quirk by the hero agencies across Japan's snapshot prophecy. The twins had recently become first-year students at UA High School. Even if some people questioned the nature of the children's quirks, given Mr. Sanji was quirkless himself, they kept their mouths shut. However, despite such a lineup of quirks at their disposal, what people questioned was Mr. Sanji's decision to adopt a quirkless child 5 years ago. The only explanation the media received from the Sanji group was that Mr. Sanji wanted to support a quirkless orphan, remembering his struggles as a quirkless child. Of course, the very act garnered worldwide praise for the tycoon. Sanji Mansion, Tokyo, Japan. Marvelous tea, Mr. Sanji. Nizu, the principal of UA High School, commented. Excellently brewed. As always. In the dining hall, the Sanji family was hosting dinner for Mr. Principal, who had arrived seeking donations for the school's support department. Mr. Sanji had seated himself at the head of the table, with Nizu on his right. His wife was to his immediate left, followed by his son and daughter. At last, seated next to Aina, was Luke, his head down. Only today they had returned from the Blue Site, the underground network of secret labs, hidden in northern Hokkaido's vast, rugged wilderness. Luke had undergone only one experiment. But, as it was centered around a complex mutation, It had left him beyond exhausted. They had patched him up pretty well, of course. Still, there was no cure for the stamina drain, yet, reflected by his sluggish actions. Nizu looked at the boy from the corner of his eye while sipping tea. Sanji, the adopted son, had dyed his hair black and was wearing contact lenses, making his eyes look black as well. It was an oddity impossible to hide from him, Nizu knew. That meant Mr. Sanji didn't want to hide it, to begin with. Mr. Principal finished his tea and was just going to ask for a private audience, when it happened. The spoon fell from the boy's hand. His eyes rolled back into his head, a spasm coursing through his body, making it rigid. With a jig, the boy fell off the chair, making the plate, full of food, fall on him as well, the sound of metal striking the floor ringing across the dining hall. Luke! Mr. Sanji almost flew to the boy. Sand! Nizu had run around the table when he saw a wave of sand flying in, taking the shape of a brown-haired and brown-eyed, bearded man, wearing a brown uniform. Mr. Sanji's personal bodyguard. Nizu looked at the boy who was experiencing a seizure. But it was the expressions of Mr. Sanji's face that surprised him. Never had he seen such a dread on someone's face. Never. Much less needed to be said about seeing one of the most powerful people in the world when it came to financial, political, and societal influence. Nizu's cold reasoning also reminded him that the boy wasn't even blood-related to the man. There's something here, Mr. Principal noted as both men held the boy. Then the bird arrived. Luke! Nix cawed, fluttering down from above. I told you! I told you! You piece of sleek-haired sheet! She lunged at Mr. Sanji's face, trying to claw out his eyes. But a fistful amount of sand surrounded it, holding it midair. From the sides, Miss Sanji frowned at the bird along with her children. Just like that, just as Ryujuru had picked Luke up to take him to the hospital, it was over. Luke opened his eyes, carrying the weight of 10 years' worth of memories. For a moment, it felt like everything had been a dream. The loneliness, the sadness, the cleanliness, anger and madness, love. Momo, their daughter. Everything felt like blurry events from a vivid dream. Then he saw figures taking shape in his vision. His father was bent over his face, panic overflowing his eyes. Next to him was Sand, the cold man who did everything his father wanted without question. There was a white mouse, too, with Nix held up in the air, surrounded by sand. Nix! Luke shouted, not in panic, but with a strange, conflicted joy. It wasn't a dream. He had died, his family had been betrayed and killed. That wasn't a dream. He had gone to the gray castle of Mr. Fool. That wasn't a dream. He had returned to the past with purpose. That wasn't a dream. Tears began flowing out from Luke's eyes as he reached out toward Nix, the last image of her lying dead between him and Momo vanishing from his mind. He wanted to touch her. He wanted to return the spirit particles of her from the future. Suddenly, as if struck by a bolt out of the blue, Luke held himself back, calming himself down. No, he wasn't a 14-year-old boy. The memories were still settling down, his personality, knowledge, and experiences superimposing with his current, childish self. And with that came prudence. He remembered the meeting his father had with Mr. Principal. It was some 11 years ago. It was also the night when his father had dreamt of All for One and then 3 days later had taken him to the blue site, never to return. Has this ever happened before? Nizu asked, eyeing Luke weirdly. Before Mr. Sanji could reply, Luke opened his mouth. Father, he said, sitting up. I am all right. It wasn't the time to act out and do something rash, Luke knew. He needed some time to wrap his mind around everything. Not to mention, his head was pounding. Also, if he wanted Nix to regain her memories, he needed to do it at a place where others couldn't see them. At this point, if he were to touch her even for a few seconds, it would get reported. Nix, being Nix, was bound to make a fuss upon remembering everything. Ryujuru looked up and nodded at Sand, who held Luke's hand, saying, Come. I will get you looked up by a doctor. Luke nodded, keeping his head down, trying to recall how he used to behave. However, he had underestimated how thorough this resurrection was. With his memories, knowledge, and experience, The traumas he had yet to face had returned as well. So, when Luke stood up and saw himself covered with juices and bits of food, his entire face contorted. He slammed his hands at himself, trying to get it off. There was such madness about Luke's actions that, in moments, he ripped off his shirt. And, with his head already bombarded with pain, this time when his eyes rolled back, he truly passed out. An family portrait of Sanji's is available on Patter 0N, showing all members chapter text. Luke lay in bed, staring dead at the ceiling. It's been a few minutes since he had woken up. He was in his bedroom with Nix perched on the bedpost, sleeping. To his left, on a sofa, was his father, sleeping as well. The doctors must have come and gone after checking up on him, finding nothing wrong. If it wasn't for Mr. Principal's visit in the evening, making him wary, his father would have taken him to Dr. Donald on his private jet. The sudden, cold reasoning ability made Luke frown. It seemed the memories had finally settled down and the resurrection had completed. As if that was a cue to activate some greater mysteries, Luke's vision blurred, rows of white-colored words appearing over a black background with a soothing, female voice, shocking him. Congratulations! Welcome to the Lord of Mysteries system, Blessed. You have unlocked Sequence 9, Apprentice, Marauder, Seer. Luke almost sat up in shock, but held himself back, his breath quickening. What's this? Mind control. Luke remembered what Mr. Fool had told him before sending him back into the past. Of course, you would find that changing the events leading to your death will be pointless, especially if there are external factors involved. In that case, I am willing to extend a helping hand to you, parasitizing you with a hint of my powers. Is this the helping hand Mr. Fool mentioned? Luke looked around and noticed that his father hadn't woken up. Only I can hear and see this notification? Taking a deep breath, he focused on the notification again. What are sequences? He asked the question within. Sequences are paths to the divine. Each sequence is numbered from 9 to 0, with 9 being the lowest and 0 being the highest. To step onto the paths to the divine, the blessed must consume the potion of a sequence, gaining mystical abilities corresponding to that sequence. Those who consume potions to reach the divine are called beyonders. Luke narrowed his eyes. The sequence is almost like a growth-type quirk. Then he eyed the 3 different sequence 9s and corrected himself. 3 growth-type quirks? Luke looked at the mention of the potion, then, show me the details of the 3 sequences. Sure. Let me display all the sequences' general abilities and their potion ingredients in brief. You can go through the detailed processes of brewing the potions later. Sequence 9. Apprentice. Door opening. Phase through walls and other big obstacles by opening a symbolic, incorporeal door. Lock opening. Open any lock that doesn't contain mystical powers. Potion ingredients. 1 gem-devouring worm, 1 illusion crystal, 10 drops of goat's beard hydrosol, 90 milliliters of ancient well water, 1 flower grown from a corpse, 5 grams of spirit world contaminated soil. Sequence 9. Marauder. Superior observation. See in the darkness and have an intuition of where valuable items are or even how much they're approximately worth. Physical enhancement. Enhanced agility, dexterity, and strength. Also grants powerful coordination, near inhuman level of acrobatic skills, and excellent talent in the realm of throwing various objects. Theft. All abilities serve to make the Marauder's core skill of stealing more potent. Potion ingredients. 1 blood-speckled black mosquito, 1 core of a candle devourer, 100 milliliters of another's blood, nail fragments from 9 different individuals, 1 sapphire, 10 grams of verbena powder. Sequence 9. Seer. Enhanced memory. Spirit vision. See non-physical things, such as ghosts and specters, and different parts of a soul to deduce a person's health and emotions through it. Divination arts and ritualistic magic. Master all kinds of divination methods, including astrology, spiritual numbers, and scrying. Danger intuition. Can intuitively detect danger. Potion ingredients. 10 milliliters of Lavos squid's crystallized blood, 50 grams stellar aqua crystal, 13 drops of night vanilla liquids, 7 gold mint leaves, 3 drops of poison hemlock, 9 grams of dragon blood grass powder. Note: all abilities will keep progressing as you digest a sequence potion. You can consume a different sequence potion of the same level only after you have fully digested the already consumed one. You can consume a higher level potion of a sequence only after you have fully digested all the lower level potions of the 3 sequences. That was a lot of information. But Luke, who had spent over a decade memorizing books upon books, and even more complex procedures, it took him less than a moment to process everything. Luke focused on seer first. Enhanced memory was well and good, but his memory already bordered on photographic. But when he saw spirit vision, he remembered seeing himself as Mr. Fool saw him, the spirit particles manifesting as quirk factors within his hands. That's a great ability. Luke ruminated. I can target certain parts of the plants and animals using my bioalchemy even finer if I can see the spirit particles within them. But in combat, only danger intuition is helpful. Contrary to Seer, Marauder attracted Luke's attention more. Not only it would help him physically, but it would also attack his greatest weakness, his body. Then there was Apprentice. An ability to escape any entrapment to run away. Luke wanted them all, but he must decide which he wanted the most first. Keeping that in the back of his mind, he focused on the second thing that garnered his attention. What's digestion? Great question, Blessed. Digestion refers to the process where a Beyonder assimilates the mystical qualities of a consumed sequence potion into their body, soul, and mind. If you fail to digest a potion, you become mentally unstable, risk going insane and mutating into a monster, and cannot safely take the next higher sequence potion. It will be even more dangerous for you, Blessed, as you will be consuming sequence potions from different paths. However, the Lord of Mysteries system will help you curb some of the potential dangers. For that, I recommend using the acting method. The name of a potion is not solely symbolic at its core, but a concrete imagery and the key to digestion. Acting method is the process of acting according to the potion's name to fully digest the potion. For this, the Blessed must understand the core traits and behavior patterns of the consumed sequence potion. You must actively simulate, practice, or embody those traits in real life, while simultaneously keeping in mind that you are only acting. With the acting method, you can digest a potion faster, and your abilities will become more instinctive and easier to control. Upon full digestion, you will have a clear sense of breaking a bottleneck. Luke nodded to himself. So it's not as simple as drinking a potion to gain powers. Reasonable, I guess. Still, there was this one unnerving feeling that was constantly prickling his nerves. At the end of the day, it all depended on, will you provide the potion ingredients to me? This time when the female voice spoke, it sounded hesitant. Unfortunately, such a feat is impossible, Blessed. Your world is cut off from outside interference by a boundary. The Lord of Mysteries system cannot contact the Grey Castle to exchange physical and spiritual objects. Also, the potion ingredients are alien to your world and don't exist, as already confirmed by Mr. Fool before bestowing the system to you. Perhaps, as you rise higher in sequences and spread Mr. Fool's faith, I will be able to do so. So, till then, do your best. Good luck. Luke's lips twitched. Good luck? How am I supposed to become a Beyonder without potion ingredients? Luke had just cried out in his mind in shock when the system replied with a notification. Worry not, Bless. Mr. Fool has designed me in such a way that I am indistinguishable from your spirit body in nature. As your quirk is a manifestation of your spirit body, I can interact with it to do many cool things. For example, by interacting with bioalchemy, I can let you know the exact composition of all potion ingredients, organic and inorganic, on a molecular level. With your background, and using this information, you can create many ingredients yourself with the help of your quirk. Also, the cool things I talked about aren't limited to this. I can turn your entire quirk into stats, making it more understandable and usable when it comes to battles. To know more, you must step onto the paths to the divine first, becoming a Beyonder. Then, together, we can not only fulfill Mr. Fool's directives of investigating the spirit world's absence, while also spreading his faith and gathering followers, but we can also figure out the mysterious events that led to your death. Awesome, right? Luke's eyes were already shining. This solved almost everything. Using bioalchemy, I can target specific mutations in plants and animals, extracting potion ingredients through them, Luke thought, a smile surfacing on his lips. That left inorganic. Luke's quirk didn't work on non-living objects and those who had a quirk. But as he stared at the notification, he remembered who did possess such an ability, a wetness blurring his vision. Momo Yaoyorozu had the quirk creation. If she knew the composition of an object, she could create it through her body. Luke's fingers tightened into a fist. He didn't know how would he react if he were to meet her now. Her of the future had accepted him. Her of now was but a child. Blessed, I understand your internal conflict. But let me warn you about something. The sequences shared with you by Mr. Fool would work best if you don't isolate yourself from society. The process of digestion using the acting method makes it impossible, too. At higher sequences, the connections you make today will play an even more active role. Also, the things that we need to accomplish can't be done without dirtying our hands. So, you must be ready to prepare yourself. You must be ready to face your traumas. If you remain half-hearted, then the chances of you losing control after drinking sequence potions will rise exponentially. All I can do is to help you stabilize your condition to some extent. It will not work if you yourself aren't willing to work on it. Luke's mouth flattened into a thin line. The system was right, he knew. He couldn't play the nice guy anymore. What did playing the nice guy get him anyway? The answer was clear death. Ever since he had returned, he knew he would be walking on a path extremely different from his previous life. He couldn't afford to face the same fate, not accomplishing anything. Then there was the matter of the enemy. Luke could still see Katsuki Bakugo, the demonic grin planted like a worm on his hideous face. Whenever he thought of that guy, anger and rage boiled inside him. Yet, the scientific mind told him to be rational about all this. Yes, Bakugo was a difficult guy, but he wasn't a villain. Not to mention, only a few months ago before his death, Momo herself had gone to him, asking him to become the head bodyguard until she gave birth. Luke couldn't figure out this mystery if held onto his usual personality. And, if the enemy was vastly more powerful than any hero he had ever known, then he must depend on the system to contend against it. He must become a beyonder of the three paths. He must take help from Momo, whether he liked it or not. Luke let out a sigh, already feeling the burden of the tasks to come in the future. The Lord of Mysteries system is very interactive, Luke thought, noticing the oddity. I wonder if Mr. Fool designed it by using someone's personality as the basis. I don't know. Maybe? Luke took a deep breath. So, first, I need a place where I can freely use my quirk. As much as I hate the blue site, I have to agree with my father on this. That Demed place is the safest place on the planet for me. Now that Luke knew some of the gravest events to come, he knew how important it was to not let anyone know about the true potential of his quirk. Second, I require a way to remain around Momo and Bakugo, a way to freely operate in society, while keeping my true identity hidden. At first, Luke had thought to let Mr. Principal know everything that was about to happen regarding All for One. However, the moment he had thought of this, he faced two cold facts. First, because he had spent most of his life at the blue site, the events he knew related to the outside were only the big picture. He didn't know the intricate details of anything. Even after marrying Momo, they rarely talked about the past, limiting it to the happy times she had spent with her classmates. Second, Luke couldn't trust anyone. He had no idea who had ordered the attack on his family. If Katsuki Bakugo, one of the greatest heroes of all time, had fallen to villainy, then who knew how many heroes had also fallen and when? I have a suggestion, Bleth. How about you join the UA high school next year? With this, you can remain closely involved with Momo and the other heroes. Also, with the limited knowledge you have of the future, you can dictate how the events play out. Together with this, to accomplish our goals, you can keep a second persona of a vigilante. As a hero, you can use your bioalchemy quirk. And, as a vigilante, you can fully put the sequence's mystical abilities to use. Bree. Luke put a hand on his mouth. Brilliant. Thank you. So, Luke thought, listing out the things to do, Use blue site to freely get organic potion ingredients without attracting attention. Join you. Get Momo's help to get the rest of the ingredients. Become a Beyonder. Create a vigilante persona. Then investigate the matter of spirit world and the mysterious enemy. Exactly as I would have summarized it. Luke nodded. But before all that, if he wanted to avoid the same fate as his previous life, he needed to accomplish a specific task right here and now. Luke looked at his father, knowing that he could be dreaming about the all-for-one revelation anytime now. Luke needed to do something about it without waking up his father because that wasn't a solution. What if his father dreamed of the same thing tomorrow? Luke couldn't keep just sitting by his father's bed every night. Slowly, he sat up, his eyes hardening with determination. If this was before, the 14-year-old Luke could have never accomplished such a feat. Things were different now, though. This Luke had undergone a lifestyle so hideous and repulsive that he had awakened bioalchemy to a level that it could bestow even the most complex quirks. Tonight, Luke thought, touching Nyx by his bed, I will change fate. Luke reached for Nyx, who was silently sleeping, perched on his bedpost. Suddenly, the notification flashed between him and the bird. Wait, it's not a good idea. Luke's hand paused. What happened? We can't afford to lose time. It wasn't like Luke was hasty, but time was literally against him. If his father woke up after dreaming of all for one, then he would lock up Luke into the blue site. Another point was that Luke was confident. When he was 14 years old in his previous life, he could barely bestow a complex quirk to a life form before passing out. It wasn't the case with him now. Some awakened their quirks under extreme emotions. Like had awakened his bioalchemy under the constant torture, always pushing himself. Now, he could not only maintain a complex quirk, but he could also bestow quirks to at least 3 different life forms. Of course, the complexity of the quirks dictated how many quirks he could maintain and for how long. The system had a piece of bad news for him, though. Blessed, even if your spirit body has undergone qualitative change because of Mr. Fool's blessing, your body is still the same, i.e. your stamina is the same as when you were of this age in your previous life. So, the moment you bestow a complex quirk to Nyx, you will pass out. I have an idea. Let me show you the current values of your spirituality and stamina. You can do that? Luke asked. Of course. As I said, I can do many cool stuff. Whippy whippy. Done. Bless stats. Spirit 250. Stamina 30. Spirit here shows your spirituality, which, in turn, will dictate the usage of quirk. So, let's say you bestow a simple levitating quirk to a cat, and then a set number of points will be deducted from your spirit. Basically, you are just transferring your spirit particles, using them to manipulate the spirit particles of the target. Using bioalchemy, you rearrange the spirit particles in the target's body, giving it mystical abilities. The more complex the arrangement, the higher the spirit consumption, and the vaster the load on the target. Also, I realized something while calculating spirit. You can't bestow a quirk that consumes more spirit points than the total spirit points of the life form. That's why most of the life forms to whom you bestowed complex quirks ended up, boom. Of course, the spirit particles bestowed returns to you automatically. Stamina is stamina. This was the first time for him, a quirk scientist, to see things from a spiritual perspective. And as much as he disliked to admit it, all these explanations made much more sense if he were to take spirit particles into account. So, not only my spirituality, Luke analyzed, but the target's spirituality also matters. Yes, that's why it was always easier for me to bestow quirk to large life forms. In the case of insects and all, it never worked. Luke stared at the values. Then, any reference for this data? He asked. For now, I have only generated the most relevant stats. We can work on more when we need them. I can only get a rough idea of someone's stats if you interact with them spiritually. For reference, Nyx's stats. Spirit 60. Stamina 15. Luke's jaw dropped. You don't mean to say that I have only twice the stamina of a bird? He screamed inside. Sadly, it is true, Blessed. Have you ever looked yourself in the mirror? Luke didn't know what to say. He looked to his far left and saw the mirror. Scrawny was the best word that came to his mind. He was just skin and bones, with the smoothest white-brown color painted on him. Luke took a deep breath and contemplated what to do then. He again looked at the stats and his eyes narrowed. If I restore Nyx's memories, first, then will her spirit double? Because if that happens, then the load on my stamina will practically half as well for the quirk I need to bestow her. But I didn't think of that. Excellent observation, blessed. You are right. Nyx's spirit body is within you. If you bestow the basic intelligence quirk to her now, then her spirit points will double. Also, for my future reference, can you think of which quirk you want to bestow her in detail? It's always a great idea to record the data, right? Luke smiled. Yes, it always was. Closing his eyes, he pictured out the quirk in detail as per his practice. Not only did he think of the quirk factors involved, but he also layered out Nyx's anatomy, pinpointing where he would want the quirk factors to converge. That's why he had needed to study extensively before each experiment, to begin with. When it was done, the system's voice buzzed in Luke's mind like an ecstatic girl in her late teens. That's so fascinating. Very detailed. Let me calculate your consumption. Shup. Done. Quirk, dreamwalk, complexity, consumption, spirit 100, stamina 28. I have decided to allot a letter to the quirk. Please note that these don't take a target's compatibility with the quirk into account. The complexity can be simple for one target while impossible for another, right? Here's what I have come up with for quirk complexity. Very simple, D spirit points 5 to 10. Simple, C spirit points 15 to 25. Moderate, B spirit points 30 to 50. High, A spirit points 55 to 80. Super, S spirit points 90 to 120. Plus Ultra, S plus spirit points 130 to 180. Blessed gone insane, X spirit points greater than 200. The corner of Luke's mouth twitched. But yes, Dream Walk, his stepbrother's quirk, was what he had decided to use against his father's soothsayer. After going through the quirk complexity stats, Luke read the note above. Not taking compatibility into account makes sense, Luke thought. It's much easier to sharpen a cat's claws than giving it wings. If I am right, then the complexity doesn't necessarily mean higher spirit and stamina consumption, but that should usually be the case. Luke took a deep breath, deciding not to wait anymore. Alright, he said in his mind. Let's do this. What should I call you? Saying the system doesn't ring the bell. Oh, I was waiting to properly introduce me. Let me drink a glass of water, please. I am Miss Justice. Nice to meet you, Blessed. I will be in your care for a while. Miss Justice? Luke nodded. Nice to meet you too. Now he was sure that Mr. Fool had designed the Lord of Mysteries system with someone's personality as the basis, or, at least, a version of her personality. Then, without saying anything, Luke reached out and grabbed Nyx's beak. Oh, rascal. Luke tightened his grip on her beak, putting a finger on his mouth. There were cameras in the bedroom, except for the bathroom. Luke gestured toward the bathroom. This was already suspicious if they later checked out the footage, but he had no choice. Nyx eyed him as if the boy had gone truly insane. Still, she silently hopped onto the boy's shoulder as he tiptoed to the bathroom. Once inside, Luke let out a breath of relief and stared at his best friend with a nostalgic expression. Don't worry, Nyx cawed. I won't let you die until you lose your virginity. Nyx, Luke gasped. And suddenly, for no reason, tears welled up in his heart, his eyes losing focus. Before the bird could say anything, Luke lifted his hand and touched her. This time, Nyx's eyes rolled back in her head, over 10 years' worth of memories bombarding her little mind. Very important announcement. On Webnovel, starting next month, the top contributor of Dr. Blessed will be awarded free subscription of Inheritors tier worth $4.99. It offers 12 chapters ahead of both Dr. Blessed and Chaos and Order, along with all backlog chapters and the upcoming monthly chapters. More on it is available on a free, pinned post on my Patter Zero N page. On Royal Road, every advance review on Dr. Blessed will get you free access to all the chapters of Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Drive Blessed, letting you access the author-generated images and GIFs attached within. Enjoy! Chapter begins. Luke tried his best to console Nyx, but both kept crying. Like him, her spirit had doubled the moment he had bestowed her the basic intelligence quirk. Surprisingly, it didn't consume him any spirit points. Nyx's spirit body latched to Luke's soul had, instead, transferred itself to the bird, fusing with the already present soul within her. It also made her remember their previous lives. If it wasn't for the heightened intelligence, the bird would have collapsed right there and then, never waking up again. You guys can catch up later. Hurry! Miss Justice is right, Luke said, rubbing his eyes and taking a deep breath to put on his game mode. We need to handle Father's dream first. Nyx rubbed her wings over her eyes as well, her red pupils gaining a lethargic grayness. Luke then put his hand on Nyx's head, mentally bestowing and arranging quirk factors. The collective spirit particles that belonged to Nyx and the ones getting bestowed by Luke rearranged themselves, elevating the bird's mystical existence. When it was done, Luke took off his hand. Quirk bestowal successful. Quirk, dreamwalk, complexity, consumption. Spirit 100, target spirit points. Stamina 28. Contact time, 11 seconds. Activation time, 5 to 6 minutes. Wow! Luke wondered aloud. He had extensively mapped out the time he needed to bestow different kinds of quirk and the time they remained active later. The system's calculations were not only right, but they also seemed to be much more thorough. This will come in handy. Luke looked at Nyx. Are you ready? Nyx's voice still held a coarseness. I was born ready. I just don't understand one thing. What? Luke frowned. He had already shared the details regarding the system with her. She was probably the only one he could blindly trust in this world anymore. With your stamina, Nyx cawed. How you and Momo kept doing it? Nyx. Luke gasped. I am blushing. Luke facepalmed. Then, knowing they were losing time, he snapped his fingers. Snapping fingers wasn't a true necessity, but it had become a habit, acting like a mental cue. In the same way, if Luke needed to snatch back the bestowed quirk or deactivate it before it ran out naturally, he could also do so whenever he wanted with a snap of his fingers. A shine coursed through Nyx's body as if someone had reflected a mirror at her from very far away. Then, in Nyx's red pupils, black mist surged. Nyx landed on Luke's shoulder and pressed her claws on him, snickering. Leave everything to this old Empress of Darkness. Luke rolled his eyes. And then they fell, space exploding around in a mass of blackness. It was a sea of darkness, geysers of black mass erupting everywhere. Luke couldn't see anything. He didn't need to. I can see many points of light, like stars. Nyx cawed, her head bobbing left and right. Let's go to the nearest, Luke said. That should belong to his father, representing the ongoing dream. In the darkness, Nyx flew carrying Luke effortlessly as if he didn't weigh anything. After a few seconds, a brilliant blue and white flash overwhelmed Luke's vision, making him squint his eyes. This time when Luke opened his eyes, he saw colors. Figures and scenes were blending, a many-colored sea frothing everywhere. Luke blinked and he saw his father sitting in his car, just looking outside. Luke blinked again and they dissolved into a many-colored sea. The sea didn't even look like water, but thick, pastel colors. Suddenly, a notification popped up in Luke's vision with an urgency. Bless. Detecting a massive source of spirituality. Luke's brows jumped up as he shared the words with Nyx. Is it father's quirk, soothsayer? How massive? Massive. It's not your father's spirituality. This one is immensely pure and vast. Luke's heart thumped, a deep sense of foreboding settling inside. Which direction? Follow my directions. Through the sea of colors, Nyx flew carrying Luke left and right. In Luke's mind, the system kept correcting the course as if it were a beacon keeping him from getting lost in the deep space. After a minute, Miss Justice screamed, bringing them to a stop. It's here. Any further and we will get noticed. Luke's hands were trembling. Just what's going on? At first, he had come here, hoping to influence his father's dream. He wanted to plant an idea that all dreams related to All for One were just ridiculous fantasies. Nothing more. But it seemed there were other mysteries involved too. What is it? Luke asked as Nyx threateningly looked left and right. It's like a supermassive black hole, blessed. Its edges are glowing blue as if it's radiating blueness? As I said, the spirituality it's radiating is very, very pure. The only time when I felt like this in someone's presence was when Mr. Fool created me, fusing me with your spirit body. Oh heavens! Luke cursed, grounding his teeth. Can I see it? Not without spirit vision, you can't. Also, even if you could, I am not sure that would be a great idea. It's pulsating now. This time, even Luke felt it. It was like a high-frequency sound hit you on the face, but you couldn't hear anything. Suddenly, the sea of colors representing Mr. Ryujiru's dream churned, taking the shape of a time that Luke had seen footage of many times. It was when All Might had defeated All for One. No! Luke shook. This is happening too soon. Luke could see his father standing among the rubble surrounding All Might and All for One. There was no chance of talking him out of it now, not if he was to wake up right after seeing this dream. Nyx, Luke said, putting his hand on her hand. Let's go plus ultra? That's my Luke. Nyx cawed. Quirk bestowal successful. Quirk, enhance speed. Complexity, C. Consumption. Spirit 15. Targets remaining spirit points. Stamina 10. Contact time, 2 seconds. Activation time, 40 minutes. Nyx was still fine as she had 20 spirit points remaining. However, after losing 28 stamina points, Luke had only 2 left, but the quirk bestowal consumed 8 points over that value. Veins popped on Luke's face, his head banging against his skull. Blood foamed in his mouth, his muscles going taut as the tips of his fingers throbbed. You can handle it. Nyx cawed in his ear. You have suffered worse. Changing faith wasn't so easy. Luke realized, grinning a bloody smile. Momo, this is for you. And then he snapped his fingers. With a flutter of Nyx's wings, she became a bullet. Just as All for One was about to showcase his quirk-stealing power, Nyx entered the scene, cawing out her lungs and slammed right into him, exploding him into a mass of colors. It didn't take her a moment to turn around and then slam into All Might, melting his face. Left and right she blurred in and out, destroying everything. Huh. It found us. Luke had an immense sense of déjà vu. Just before his death, he had heard the same words, but he hadn't had Miss Justice then. Who had said those words? What was it? Was this the enemy he was seeking? Questions gripping his heart and blackness claiming his vision, Luke cancelled the dream walk. If he had won his first battle with fate, only time would tell. And Image of Dream World as perceived by Luke and Nyx is available on Patter 0N. Up to 60 chapters are available in advance. If you would like to support the work, while accessing exclusive author-generated images and GIFs depicting various scenes and original characters, please consider subscribing chapter text. Ryujiru, head of Sanji Group, Quirk Soothsayer. Misaki Ryujiru's wife, Quirk Future Sketch. Rikuya Ryujiru's son, UA's first-year business course, Quirk Dream Walk. Aina Rikuya's twin sister, UA's first-year general education, Quirk Snapshot Prophecy. Rinji Saivuk, Ryujiru's adopted son, Quirk Bioalchemy. Nyx, the Raven Luke's sassy companion. Chapter begins. On the very night that he regressed, Luke changed his fate for the first time. Then he spent the nights to come in a hushed dread, walking, eating, and living on the edge. Whatever that blue, supermassive black hole was, it wasn't his father's soothsayer quirk, that was confirmed. Still, it wasn't like he could give up. There was no such option for him anymore. Luke knew that he hadn't pulled the roots of the problem, as the dream revelation could return. So, he kept sending Nyx to his father's dreams, hoping she could talk him out of the madness if the dream were to return. Surprisingly, neither the dream returned nor there was any sign of a black hole when Luke went to check after a few times using the system. Luke would have doubted the system itself, as he hadn't seen anything. However, he had felt it. He had felt the presence in his bones. So, making his peace with the changed fate, he began focusing on other things. One of the two most important things he needed to decide was, of course, all for one. Even if he didn't know the intricacies, the big things he knew were also significant enough by themselves. Among those big things was the existence of Dr. Kyudai Garaki, the most infamous man who had sided himself with all for one. Behind the guise of an innocent civilian, it was he who had created Nomus, genetically engineered multiple quirk users, and then later helped Tamura Shigaraki reach his full potential. One could even say that without Dr. Kyudai Garaki, the return of all for one would have been almost impossible. Here it all became a little tricky how to do it. The most outright way was to just go out and declare that he had awakened a future sight-type quirk, mentioning all the relevant events. Many things made it impossible. First, who would believe him? He was a 14-year-old child with a troubled past. The moment he opened his mouth, his father would throw him to the blue site, locking him up for who knew how much time. Not to mention, Luke was weak even if he had awakened bioalchemy to support him. He couldn't fight a man who practically owned the government. Not yet, at least. Second, even if someone were to believe him and ask him to prove it, he wouldn't be able to. The reason bioalchemy's weaknesses, other than the obvious hindrances like contact time, activation time, and activity radius, bioalchemy's true weakness lay in something else. Even if Luke could grant a quirk, he couldn't control it. Once bestowed, how the quirk would be used entirely depended on the life form using it. It was like a child awakening their quirk for the first time. Forget about control, even coming to terms with the mystical phenomenon would be troublesome. That's why there was a compatibility factor involved in bioalchemy, i.e., if a quirk was compatible with the life form, then it was much easier to control outrightly. An even bigger trouble was that Luke couldn't control the nature of the quirk. For example, even if he could bestow a future sight-type quirk to Nyx, he couldn't dictate what sights she would actually see upon using it. That's why Luke had decided to use dream walk and not dream manipulation, because they already had ample amount of experience in handling the former quirk in their previous lives. So, in the end, Luke concluded that the matter of all for one was not in his hands as he was now. If the opportunity presented itself, then he would try to subtly guide others toward it. Otherwise, he would focus on improving his strength, tackling the situation by himself later. That's how the second of the two most important things came into the picture. Late July. He's doing what? Mr. Ryijiru's brows shot up. Sand scratched his light brown beard with a rueful expression. The personal bodyguard was still wearing a brown jacket over a skin-tight brown t-shirt and brown cargo pants. His short, brown hair looked wild, as if he had stretched his neck out of a car moving over 100 miles per hour. Where is he? Ryijiru asked, standing up. He was in his bedroom, reading the morning newspaper. Take me to him. Sand nodded. Despite being Mr. Ryijiru's personal bodyguard in name, the man had only one specific task in the Sanji mansion: Luke's safety. They arrived at the garden and saw an unbelievable sight. On one side, Aina Sanji, Mr. Ryijiru's daughter, was having tea with her mother, her brows pressed together. She was a student of the General Education Department at UA High and had come home for summer break. Her presence at UA High was only symbolic, though. The hero agency she would be working with, for how long, and for what was already decided. Unlike her, her brother Rikuya Sanji was a student of the Department of Management, despite Mr. Principal requesting him to be in the hero department. But, like his sister, what Rikuya would be doing was already dictated by his father. And that left 21. Nyx cawed, perched on Luke's bare back. Come on. You can do 10 more. 24. 25. Luke was doing push-ups. Silence. They all eyed him with gobsmacked faces. It's been over 5 years since Luke arrived in their home after getting adopted. Forget working out, the boy barely talked to anyone except for the bird. Forget looking at someone, the boy barely lifted his head to learn someone's face. As if that wasn't enough, the boy's hair wasn't dyed anymore. Golden hair, blue eyes, sweaty, thin body. Just what was going on? I noticed it a month ago. Sand whispered in Mr. Ryujiru's ear. He's been eating a lot. Working out as well? Or at least trying to work out. The boy is naturally weak. Because, you know. Mr. Ryujiru frowned. Bioalchemy costs stamina. With a weekly visit, it had never surprised him that the boy barely left his room till the next visit to the blue site. He asked me. Mr. Ryujiru's head snapped toward Sand. Asked what? Sand gulped. To help him build muscle and stamina. He said he wanted to do better during the experiments. Mr. Ryujiru's expression softened. And? Sand shrugged. I upped his diet and recommended some light exercises, but, Mr. Ryujiru, the boy's serious. He never focused on anything other than books. Ryujiru looked at the boy as he fell after doing 30 push-ups and got up. His eyes narrowed. Luke still looked scrawny, but he could spy hints of muscles here and there, like someone had just begun chiseling out a thin block of ice. Is that why he's showing so much enthusiasm in going to Blue Site? Ryujiru asked himself. Every time we go there, he spends hours roaming the place. From the corner of his eyes, he saw his daughter staring dead at Luke. He sighed. You are a military man, Sand, Ryujiru said, turning around. Just how much stamina can he even raise with all this? Sand didn't even need to think about it. I didn't recommend it before because the boy, well, it didn't feel like he would ever go for it. But considering his quirk, raising stamina makes absolute sense. Also, Luke has half the stamina of a healthy boy of his age. His potential will go through a massive boost if... Sand left it unsaid. Mr. Ryujiru sighed again. Very well, if he wants to be strong, then let him be. Smiling a little, Ryujiru looked over his shoulder as Luke began doing sit-ups. For strength gained in silence is the kind that changes fate. And up to 60 chapters are available in advance. If you would like to support the work, while accessing exclusive author-generated images and GIFs depicting various scenes and original characters, please consider subscribing chapter text. Rewind. Luke's stamina isn't consumed unless he activates a bestowed quirk within a life form. A month later, Blue Site. Sand used Luke's momentum and sent him rolling on the floor, a groan escaping the boy's throat. Come on, Sand said, smiling. You can do better than that, kid. Luke, wearing only his pants, stood up, his arms shaking. It's been 2 months since he started working on his stamina. A rich diet that hit all the protein, carb, and fat requirements, while fulfilling his vitamin and mineral needs had done wonders for him. Coupled with daily workouts, no one could tell that it was the same scrawny boy from February when he had regressed. If the feeling wasn't enough, then Luke could clearly tell that he was progressing by seeing his stats. Stamina +1. This was a great idea. Blessed stats. Spirit 250. Stamina 45. Luke smiled. He had decided to live a different lifestyle early on, but it was his father's stats that had hammered the nail on his thoughts. Luke needed to interact with someone spiritually for Miss Justice to guess their stats. After their first dream walk, the system had generated the values for Mr. Ryujiru. Mr. Ryujiru Sanji. Quirk Soothsayer. Stats. Spirit 130. Stamina 100. From one glance, Luke could tell the sheer level of the Soothsayer quirk, comparing his father's spirit points with his own. Luke's current spirit points tallied at 250, but they were over twice the value he originally held. Mr. Ryujiru's spirit points alone stood at 130. Because of his experience, Luke knew exactly how potent bioalchemy was compared to other quirks. For Soothsayer to have a value higher than that, it was at least a plus ultra-level complexity. However, it was the value of the stamina points that had poured cold water on Luke's head. Mr. Ryujiru was an average, middle-aged man. For him to have 100 stamina was like saying Luke didn't exist. It was then Luke had decided to never let his bioalchemy be held back by his stamina, at least. Everything else would come later. That's where Sand came into the picture. In his previous life, Luke had never interacted with the man who was literally responsible for his life. The gentle smile on Sand's face didn't fool Luke, though. He might have not known the truth about this man before, but he had figured it out later. Sand was a killer, a cold one at that. He had the quirk sand. He could freely control all sand in a 50-meter radius around him, but he could expand his reach to beyond 100 meters in one direction, turning him into a perfect assassin. The brown jacket, t-shirt, and pants he was wearing were all sand too. Luke had lost count of the people who had died under Sand's hands, thinking they had caught him off guard. The only weakness Sand had was that there wasn't much sand to control in an urban environment, forcing him to keep sand on him as a shirt and pants. Also, he was very prone to dehydration. Opposite Luke, Sand drank down a bottle of water, some color rising to his face. He noticed Luke's smile and felt odd. Just how could someone change so much in months? But that was the thing. About youth, wasn't it? They were rash and bold when it came to taking risks. Tell you what, Sand said, cracking his knuckles. If you land a punch on me, I will teach you the real thing. Luke's body went taut. It would teach me how to kill? Scared? Sand asked, smirking. Luke let out a scream and rushed at Sand. Ah! Afar, Chief Scientist Donald and Mr. Riadru watched all this playing out with odd expressions. Charles, one of the scientists at the Blue Site, approached Luke, holding a box of worms in his hands. They were in a big, spacious lab with different parts of animals and plants suspended in greenish solution within bottles. Luke knew there was a dedicated lab, bigger than this, for human research as well. It wasn't the time to tackle that headache, though. Red wigglers, Charles said, smiling. Why do you need them? The scientist put the box on the table as the boy made room for it, shifting the books. Just wanted to experiment with my quirk, Luke replied, smiling back. I would like to do better. To not let the cat out of the bag, Luke had been keeping the status quo on his bioalchemy quirk, letting many mutations fail, despite the fact he could control them now. The only thing that had changed was that after faking a passed-out situation, he began coming back to his senses soon, giving him enough time to prepare ingredients for the sequence potions. As Charles kept standing next to Luke, Nyx fluttered to the grown man's shoulder and whispered, I saw Elia going to lab alone. Charles gaped, color rising to his face. He looked left and right, mumbled out a thank you, and hurried away. Nyx landed on the table, shaking her head. Even scientists think with their peas. Nyx. Luke gasped. Hurry up, Nyx said, eyeing the worms hungrily. Once I make a mess, someone is bound to come. Luke took a deep breath. Miss Justice. Bring out the gem-devouring worm's composition. It's the last one, isn't it? Here we go. Luke analyzed the apprentice potion's ingredients as the system laid it out for him. They divided all ingredients into two categories, organic and inorganic. Luke could obtain organic ingredients by causing mutations in animals and plants using bioalchemy easily. The only problem was that he couldn't afford to get caught while doing so. That's why it took him over 5 months to collect all the organic ingredients corresponding to the 3 sequences. That left the inorganic ingredients, which Luke couldn't get even if he wanted to. For them, he had only one way: Momo's creation quirk. Luke nodded at Nyx and opened the box. He began touching each worm as if fascinated by them, simultaneously bestowing a mutation quirk to one of them as per the gem-devouring worm's biological composition. When he was done, he winked at Nyx. So hungry! Nyx screamed, lunging at the box. Food! With a thud, she slammed into the box, sending all the worms flying here and then. At the same moment, Luke snapped his fingers under the table. One of the worms that had fallen on his lap wriggled, becoming a yellow puss-colored worm with gem-like protrusions. His heart thumping wildly, Luke snatched that worm and put it in his pocket. Then, taking several deep breaths, he began picking up the worms, while scolding Nyx for the cameras. From the other side, Charles came rushing toward them, adjusting his pants. What happened? He asked, frowning, seeing the mess. Sorry. Nyx cawed, not looking sorry at all. I guess, like you, I can't control my urges as well. Luke shouted within. Not now. I don't feel good. I will try out later. Charles nodded and took the worms-filled box from Luke. As he turned around, he suddenly paused. One worm's missing. Luke's heart jumped to his mouth. No matter how much of a lecher Charles was, There was a reason his father had selected him for the blue site. Nix calmly fluttered to Luke's shoulder. I ate one. Gonna hang me for one worm, after all we have been through, Charles? Charles smiled ruefully, looking at the camera from the corners of his eyes. Instantly, Luke and Nix realized that this fool wasn't that much of a fool. He was going to check the cameras. Luke sighed. Sorry. He apologized. Charles. Then he snapped his fingers with the hand that was still in his pocket, activating the quirk he had already bestowed to Nix. Quirk, brainwash, complexity, consumption, spirit 70, stamina 20, contact time, 7 seconds, activation time, 11 minutes. Nix's red pupils glowed redder, and the same glow took over Charles's eyes as well, brainwashing him on the spot. And character image of Sand and Luke as he bestow quirk to a worm are available on Patreon, link in my bio. Up to 60 chapters are available in advance. If you would like to support the work, while accessing exclusive author-generated images and GIFs depicting various scenes and original characters, please consider subscribing. September. Aina Sang entered Luke's bedroom and, for a moment, felt like she smelled nature. The 15-year-old daughter of the Sanji family, the user of the famous snapshot prophecy quirk, was 168 centimeters tall. She had silk-like, black hair, reaching to her waist. Her eyes were gray with a touch of silver in them, making them look glassy as the bedroom's light fell on her face. Today, she was wearing a flowing skirt, blue, with lavender embroidery. Like her brother, Rikuya, she had come home for the weekend. Unlike her brother, she knew Luke wasn't going insane, but coming out of the buried insanity. She went to the boy's bed, carrying a Polaroid camera in her left hand, and brushed the palm of her right hand over it. Then she looked around, noticing every corner. It all felt so clean. She took a deep breath, the softness in the air making her wish she was a part of it. Suddenly, the bathroom door opened and through the steam, Luke walked out, a towel wrapped around his waist. Aina stared dead at Luke, color rising to her face. In only a few months, her stepbrother had undergone a growth spurt, now standing tall at 175 centimeters. Not only that, the scrawny boy she had the memory of seemed to have melted away at some point in time. Now, Luke carried toned muscles, his eyes holding a shine like never before. Aina. Luke smiled at the little girl. Did you need something? In his previous life, Luke had never interacted with his stepbrother and stepsister. Never. He had always felt like Ms. Misaki, their mother, hated him for some reason. So, he had made extra sure to never talk to the boy or girl. However, he also knew their personalities. Even though Rikuya was in the management course, it was Aina who was the smarter of the two. She also didn't possess her brother's overwhelming pride in their family's name. Aina said, her eyes wide, have grown. Luke chuckled. Too tall? In the next year he would hit his height limit of 182 centimeters, he guessed. Still, now that he thought about it, he was a centimeter taller than his previous life. Because of his weekly visits to Blue Site, Luke had accurate data about himself. I didn't mean the height, Aina thought, looking away. Luke reached for his t-shirt. Wait. Luke looked at Aina. What happened? Aina stood there rooted to her place for a while. Then she almost jumped. Ah yes. Can I take a snapshot? Luke stared at the camera Aina was waving at him. Doesn't her quirk work only on people-less locations? He thought, frowning inwardly. Not many people knew the secrets of snapshot prophecy, but he did, thanks to his memories. Is she still experimenting? Luke nodded. Sure. Sniff. Luke blinked the whiteness away. Oh, that was fast. She didn't even give me time to put on clothes. When vision returned to him, Aina was already checking out the photo, blowing on it. Suddenly, something clicked in Luke's mind. Aina. Yes. The girl fumbled with the snapshot, throwing it in her pocket. Can you do me a favor? Favor? Why is he talking so formally? Aina thought. Then again, it was the first time they had exchanged more than a hello or good morning. Perhaps this is how he always talks? What favor? Are you going to Momo's birthday next week? Luke asked. Aina's eyes narrowed, becoming thin needles. Do you know her? Luke sensed something was amiss. No. Then why are you calling her by her first name? Oh shit. Luke cursed. Aina was smart. He couldn't fool her by saying he slipped. I don't know her last name. But that makes sense. Aina's shoulder relaxed. Why are you asking about her birthday? Luke put on the t-shirt. I was wondering if... You want to go? Aina guessed, her eyes shining. And you want me to convince father? Luke blankly stared at her. Yes, can you? Sure. Aina shouted and almost hopped out of the bedroom. What just happened? Luke pressed his brows. A few moments later, Nyx flew in after her light stroll in the sky. Did I just see the seductress coming out of your room? Nyx. Luke gasped. Don't you dare keep calling her that. I tolerated it before, but she's just a little girl now. Luke never really understood why Nyx called Aina something that gross in his previous life as well. Nyx scoffed. What was she here for anyway? Shaking his head, Luke told the bird everything. Nyx narrowed her eyes as if she could see Aina through the walls. The girl will get Luke in trouble one day. Luke suddenly paused. Oh, Miss Justice. Did you record Aina's stats? She didn't activate her quirk. Luke stared at the notification, dumbfounded. In the middle of the night, Luke woke up and went to the bathroom, Nyx fluttering to his shoulder, both yawning. The moment they entered the bathroom, though, all their tiredness melted away. The bathroom was large enough to be called a room by itself. Spit them out, Luke said, sitting on the toilet seat. One by one, Nyx began vomiting tiny things that immediately expanded to become green solution-filled bottles and boxes. Quirk, shrink, complexity, consumption, spirit 105, stamina 26, contact time 10 seconds, activation time 5 minutes. After collecting the last ingredient, Luke had bestowed shrink quirk to Nyx, hiding them within her. The activation time here meant her ability to shrink objects, not the time of how long the objects would remain in that stage. In his previous life, Luke had learned to take advantage of such loopholes pretty well. However, the moment these objects came into contact with the atmosphere, they returned to their original size. Plants are still fine, Luke said, looking at the flower grown from a corpse, dragon bloodgrass powder, and other plant-based ingredients. I can mutate the plant and cut off the ingredient required, letting it return to its original composition. But animals? Luke looked at the minced bandit dog's heart and other animal-based ingredients, his eyes coming to a rest on the gem-devouring worm, now suspended in a solution. Cutting off a mutated part basically left an animal handicapped at best. At worst, he needed to kill it, preserving its corpse, like the worm. Otherwise, the mutation would reverse by itself, or the life form would end up exploding. Luke let out a sigh. Have you decided which sequence potion you will use first? Nyx asked. Before going to Momo's birthday, he needed to finalize his first sequence. He wouldn't be able to ask her to create all the inorganic ingredients without looking suspicious. Not to mention, Mr. Principal and other pro-heroes would be there as well. And they were also one of the prime reasons for Luke to go to the birthday. Miss Justice? Luke thought. A little help. Rise and shine. I am here to help you, of course, blessed. Apprentice needs 3 inorganic ingredients. So, that's out of the question. Marauder and Seer both require 1 each, i.e., Sapphire and Stellar Aqua Crystal, respectively. Of course, the Sapphire here is different from the one present in your world. Marauder will definitely help you physically, increasing your stamina. Seer, on the other hand, will enhance your spirituality, i.e., spirit points. Both are equally important and good, blessed. You can go for either one. It's just a matter of time until you get the others as well. Also, once you have consumed all 3 potions, I have a surprise waiting for you. Luke stared at all the ingredients and then looked up, seeing himself in the mirror. His eyes were shining blue, just like the supermassive black hole from his father's dream that he had. Failed to see. And character image of Aina Sion-ji is available in this chapter on Patter 0 and link is in my bio. Up to 60 chapters are available in advance. If you would like to support the work, while accessing exclusive author-generated images and GIFs depicting various scenes and original characters, please consider subscribing chapter text. Luke had no idea how in Mr. Fool's name his stepsister, Aina, convinced their father. That man wouldn't let Luke go to the bathroom alone if it wasn't for the decency born out of his lifestyle. So, as Luke sat in the limo with his entire family on September 23rd, he was still having a hard time believing it. They all were dressed normally. Nothing extravagant. If there were signs of wealth, then they were subtle. The platinum earrings that Mrs. Sanji wore. The custom-tailored suit that Mr. Sanji donned. The neatness that Rikuya held. The coldness that Aina wielded. Luke had been forced to dress in a black suit and pants over a white shirt, matching the dress code with his father and stepbrother. Misaki and Aina wore plain, blue gowns that brought out the shine of their black hair. As his father and mother chatted, Rikuya, seated between Ryujuru and Luke, put his hand on Luke's thigh. He squeezed. "If you did anything to humiliate us," he said, looking at Luke and Nyx. He left the rest unsaid. Rikuya was unlike all the young heirs of wealthy families Luke had read in the books. The boy was just too serious. All the time. He was 170 centimeters tall, still growing. He had sharp facial features and a head full of black hair, his black eyes holding a constant look of contemplation, exactly like his father. Rikuya squeezed once more, making Luke press his brows. Then he let go. Luke noticed that Aina was watching it all play out with one of her eyes, the other one closed to maintain the coldness. That felt so good, Luke thought. My muscles are so sore. Miss Justice's reaction brought out a smile on Luke's face. Opposite him, seeing the smile on Luke's face, Aina snapped her eye shut. "We are here, sir," San said, opening a slit from the front. He winked at Luke and then closed it up. Luke took a deep breath. "Don't go nuts after seeing her," Nyx whispered in his ear. "Just follow the lead of this old empress." "Momo!" Nyx cried out her lungs. "Let me go!" Luke grabbed Nyx with all his might as he felt eyes on him. From his side, Mrs. Sanji and Rikuya were glaring daggers at him. And it was when they hadn't even seen Momo. Luke pinched Nyx's beak and hurriedly apologized in all directions, bending his waist as low it was possible. Then, his heart pounding, he rushed to a corner. As the people got busy, sharing fake smiles, Luke suddenly realized something, taking deep breaths. Much had changed since his regression, but some things still felt like déjà vu. Here he was once again in a corner, feeling stifled by so many people. Nyx squirmed in his chest, a few of her feathers falling out. "Let me go," she hissed. "I can make her understand." Luke snapped. "I thought you were the smarter between us. Get a hold of yourself." Nyx stared at Luke angrily, tears streaming down her dark feathers. Then her body softened. "I miss her. I couldn't even say goodbye." Luke's eyes misted. "Stop, they are watching us." He couldn't see anyone, but you could trust San to always have an eye on both of them. Suddenly, the hubbub died. Luke and Nyx looked up and saw her coming toward the towering birthday cake, pressed between Mr. and Mrs. Yaoyorozu. Momo was wearing a simple, red gown, her dark eyes shifting left and right. As the children sang Happy Birthday, the background music enlivening the atmosphere, the 14-year-old Momo cut the cake. Luke couldn't see her, though. They had celebrated only one birthday together. Still, he knew how much she disliked this fanfare. He remembered eating the cake with her. Just the two of them. Nyx diving deep into the cake, spattering it everywhere. Luke liked his lips, his throat going dry. When he came back to the present, they were already taking away the cake. He saw as Mr. Yaoyorozu pulled his father away. Mrs. Yaoyorozu and his stepmother chatted, joining other ladies. Aina and Rikuya congratulated Momo as other children surrounded her, presenting gifts. "Hello." Luke almost jumped, looking around. "Down." Luke stared at Mr. Principal. "Remember, you are 14 years old." Hello." Nizu smiled. "You aren't going to congratulate her? That's why you are here, aren't you?" "Yes." Luke smiled ruefully. "I will go now?" Mr. Principal nodded. Taking a deep breath and letting it out, Luke marched away, feeling eyes on his back. Tonight, Nizu was as important to his plans as Momo. If he wanted to change his fate, then he must accomplish all his goals tonight. But first, he needed Momo to create an ingredient. He approached the children and stood at the back, sharing a glance with Nyx. Nyx sighed. "All right," she whispered, closing her eyes. When she opened them again, she had already buried the emotions. "Let's do it." Luke ignored the Rikuya's frown and pressed forward. He was much calmer among children, it seemed. Seeing them from a grown-up's perspective was quite helpful. He was also a head taller than everyone, with blonde hair and blue eyes that had always worked against him before. "Ms. Momo," Nyx said, making all children look at the bird with fascination. "Big fan." The sounds of Os and Os surrounded Luke and Nyx. "Thank you," Momo replied. Then she looked at Luke. "Is she your quirk?" Luke hurriedly shook his head, feeling a coldness seeping into his bones. San was definitely looking dead at his back. "I have no quirk." The children shifted on their feet as if they were afraid of catching a disease. Nyx cleared her throat, bringing attention to herself again. "I have a gift for you, an interactive one." Momo's eyes lit up. "Interactive?" Nyx slapped the back of Luke's head. "Take it out." Luke took out a sheet of paper from his pocket obediently and handed it over to Momo. It took Momo one look to understand what she was looking at. "It's a crystal's composition?" Nyx giggled. "If you can create it, it's yours." Momo's quirk wasn't a secret among the children in this circle. How it worked, though, was a different matter altogether. Luke knew Momo was a curious girl. If he showed her an ingredient composition, she wouldn't hesitate to create it just to give herself another challenge. The children also began nudging her, hoping to see her quirk in action. Behind Luke, both Rikuya and Aina frowned, for different reasons. Opposite them, Momo smiled and nodded, going through the composition again. She lifted her right hand and immediately a blue crystal began materializing within her palm, dotted with twinkling whites. Stellar aqua crystal. The moment Momo created the crystal fully, Luke's hands trembled. It was now or never. He looked at Momo's joyful face as she admired the crystal. He noticed her innocence. He felt at the peace around her. As he closed his eyes, he heard her screams. He saw her lying inches away from him, burning. Nyx pressed her claws inside his flesh, urging him to hurry. "Villain." Luke let out a breath, putting his hands inside his pockets. "What does it matter what I am, without you?" Boom. Crash. Hey. Roar. Villains had arrived, with a snap of Luke's fingers. And image of the scene as the villains arrive is available on Patter Zero and link available in my bio. Up to 60 chapters are available in advance. If you would like to support the work, while accessing exclusive author-generated images and GIFs depicting various scenes and original characters, please consider subscribing.